hearing to order, and the corporate officer can read aloud the notice of the public hearing.
Thank you. Good morning. This public hearing is being held to hear from anyone that may be affected by the city's new zoning bylaw number 4450. The new zoning bylaw represents a comprehensive update to the existing zoning bylaw to ensure it aligns with the city's new official community plan bylaw. Public consultations regarding the new bylaw were held in January and February of this year, and first and second readings were provided on June 8th. It was then referred to external agencies for their review and comments. The Agricultural Land Commission provided some recommendations, which resulted in some amendments being made to the bylaw that is presented within today's council meeting agenda. A notice for today's public hearing was advertised on July 9th and July 16th, and the city planner was available to explain any amendments if necessary, but no calls from the public were received and no written comments were submitted prior to this public hearing.
Thank you, Brenda. So no correspondence or delegations?
There was none.
Thank you. So I'll call for a first time for any comments. And for a second time, any comments? And for a third time, any comments? Thank you. We'll then close the public hearing on our zoning bylaw 4450. At this time, it's my pleasure to open the call to order, the regular meeting of Council for Monday, July 20th, 2020. Our first item on the agenda this morning is our delegations, and we have John and Rose McDonald in attendance to discuss the flooding that occurred on June 13th. Welcome, John. The delegation table is yours.
I appreciate your opportunity to speak to you people about this today. As you know, it's not just one flood, it's probably four, and each one has got some instances that weren't up to what I'd say is acceptable. That being said, I think DSS did a fine job in all of them, but after that, it was pretty much, I'm on my own. I don't think that I need to stand out in my yard for an hour and a half after I've evacuated my house to be picked up or removed from the roadway. Even the police thought that was ridiculous. So nobody called me, nobody told me nothing. At 1 o'clock in the morning I got up, checked the creek was just fine. 3 o'clock I checked it, it was about half flow through the culvert. At that time I thought, well, maybe I'll wait until about 6 or 7, we'll see what happens. I got up at 6 o'clock, at 6:10 we were out of the house. So between 6 and 6:10 I was frantically trying to leave my house. Well, I'm watching my cars be shuffled around the driveway with the water that's coming in my yard. So at the time it was pretty dramatic because I've never seen my cars moving around in my driveway. I didn't realize at the time, but I did later that day, you guys put more water into my yard that time than ever before. I had put flood mitigation in. Myself, I had spent $40,000 on flood mitigation. So I've done everything I can possibly do to maintain my structures. That being said, you keep piling more water on me, and it seems to be like a relentless flow of it. We had at one time had set up some sort of a pooling mechanism. That would be on the other side of Spittles, where they would hold some of this water and then slowly release it into the city. At the present time, it just free flows into the city. That being said, that's the Ministry of Transportation. They put that bridge in, not the city of Dawson Creek, but they've assured me that it is not their responsibility to look after me and my yard, which I don't understand how you could flood me out continually and say it's not your fault. But they said that it's your fault. So I've talked to all the people with the Ministry of Transportation, and they have assured me it is your fault that I'm being flooded out, not their fault, because their stops at where the flood starts. Now, if you think in front of my house, there was over 70 meters of water coming across the road into my yard. 70 meters, probably 1 meter deep or better. That's incredible. But you know what? It didn't touch my house. It did not touch my house. So we have put our flood mitigation in. It is working just fine. But I cannot stand more water to be thrown at me every day. So we'll go on to the next subject that I thought was just inappropriate. Now, I'm on one side of the creek, and the people on the other side of the creek. Now, all the floods before that, Shorty came and he stayed on one side, I stayed on the other. We had some kind of communication between one side of the river and the other side of the river. This time, I had to drive for 15 minutes to get to the other side of the river to be told that them people do not have to stop these cars from flooding my house. What these cars are doing is going by and making a huge tidal wave. That tidal wave is going way beyond what my capacity of my flood mitigation can handle. So as this flood wave hits my mitigation, it washes it away. So pretty soon I have no barrier to hold that water back. And once the water starts to move, I can't hold it back anymore. Now, the whole front of my house is gone in the yard. So we have a ditch there that we put in cement to hold the water when it comes through the road onto this, like a ditch, and the ditch is just cement. Well, if we don't have cement in the bottom of that ditch, the water would just eat that up in minutes. That has taken 4 floods to wreck it. Now, I put it in, but I can't put it back. And I don't think it's my responsibility. I think it's the Ministry of Transportation's responsibility to put that back, because they've flooded me out on a constant basis here. So we put it in, it worked fine, it worked fine, it worked fine. Now it's had it. Okay, now it has to be reloaded. And I think that the city should make the Ministry of Transportation replace my flood mitigation that is in the ditch in front of my house. And that's what I really need done. I cannot afford it. I do not have the finances at the present time to replace that. Without that there, I'm just a duck waiting to be shot. So I don't want to be that duck waiting to be shot. I like to be a little bit at the forefront and set up something that's going to say, well, I'm going to hold this water, I'm going to do something to do so to it. Without that cement in the base, I'm done. So if you have any questions about it or want to, see it or whatever, you come to my place or talk to me right now about it. But someone has to take the responsibility of repairing that flood mitigation that I put in. So that's my end of my story.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Questions from council?
Could I, Your
Claire?
Worship, if I could just jump in. John, you indicated you were speaking with the MOTI, and they said it was the city's fault. Can you give me a name who you spoke it to?
Well, see, that's the bad thing about me, Blair. I have a very short memory when it comes to names, but if you wish, I'll speak to them people and come and talk to you.
That would be wonderful.
Because I cannot start saying he said or you said. This way is exactly what he said to me. There are stops at that telephone pole on the side of the road up from my house, on the other side of the road. Your responsibility starts on the road in this way. And that's what they've told me. Because I kept after them, well, it's your fault because of this, and they kept saying no. Once it gets to that point, it is the city's fault.
Was that someone locally, John?
I actually talked to several people with regards to it. I can tell you that the person in this area that I talked to is Eric, but all the people that I talked to in the south, I will not give you their names.
That doesn't, if, in order for us to move that.
No,
forward,
but I'm
it
gonna
would help.
talk,
Yeah,
I will
okay.
talk to them and have them
Okay.
phone you and talk to you, and I'll phone Eric and talk to him, because Eric's out of Fort St. John, he's more in this area here. The other people is just, they're people, and they have these other people, like Eric is supposed to be responsible for that, because this is his area. So he's out of Fort St. John. I don't have his number right here with me, but the other people, if you want, I'll have them talk to you, but.
It would be helpful, for
Okay,
sure.
I'll go phone them.
Thank you. Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Worship, and it's good to see you, John. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances.
That's all right.
Just with respect to, could you give us a bit more detail when you say the flood mitigation measures you took, or the infrastructure systems you put in place? What do those entail?
Well, to tell you, the first thing is you have to have somebody come and look at it and to take a good look, and they have to be an engineer. They have to have some sort of an understanding of it. So that being said, I have a lot of experience with people in the south, because we come from an irrigation district, and they teach me lots about irrigation if I needed to know. So I spent about $5,000 having it engineered and telling me what is needed. That being said, now then the rest was spent, about $35,000 on materials in the yard and movement of this dirt with equipment, right? So that's all done now, and it's working fine. But the cement that's in the base of that ditch is gone. And it's, I'm gonna say $5,000 touch. I'm just shooting at a number, right? I don't know for sure how much it is, but I would say probably around 5,000.
And
Go ahead.
just a question to staff, if we could. I know the city is recently qualified for disaster relief in relation to the flood events we had earlier in the month. Is that the kind of work that might be covered by those funds, or is that a different?
They do an evaluation. My understanding of the forms that you fill out, you will fill them out. They will approve or disapprove of what's put in. So a very difficult question for me to answer here and say, yes, I think that would be covered. Work in a ditch that John has talked about in the concrete, that is one that I've not heard of before, but it doesn't mean it wouldn't be covered.
Okay.
Councillor Parslow?
Yes, John, you said that in previous events, you and the fire chief were able to communicate across the creek. Were you using some walkie-talkies, or what was it?
I was the Emergency Social Service Director for Dawson Creek for 9 years, for the Peace Region District for 4 years. That means I serviced the biggest area of the province as an Emergency Social Service Director. The only thing I got out of that was a telephone. I had a telephone from the city of Dawson Creek, and that also had a lot of numbers in it. And them numbers, you just push buttons and guess what? I'm talking to somebody.
Okay.
Right? So,
And so there was a communication issue,
you're right.
and secondly, there was a lot of problems caused by waves of water, by vehicles continuing to go on that road.
Well, for me, the funniest part was I was there and a lady about 45 years old drove a car through there. And while she was driving through there, now this is about 70 meters of water on a highway, a log rolls off the side of the road onto the road and they hit it with her car. Now their car just staggered and almost fell off the road, and she gets over to my driveway and just past it and stops and gets out of her car and says, "Boy, I wanted to get a better picture." Now does that make sense to you? Almost got washed down, and she got a better picture. Now, people think that they can just drive through there, and it's a terrible damage. The people that I talked to with the engineering told me that you have to take at least a meter off the top of that road. I'm not the person engineering it, but I'm saying to you, in order for the flow to catch up to itself, because it's too high, and the culvert will never take it. So if we drop the road a meter, we may have a chance. That's what I was told. So, you know, and to have people driving through there with logs rolling across the road, and I went across over the other side and talked to the people there from the city, and they told me they don't have to stop the cars. They can't. They can do whatever they want. So then I had to drive around again and find somebody else and talk to them, and I asked them who told them that they don't have to start these cars. And you know what they told me? They couldn't tell me. So pretty much they didn't want to say who told them they didn't have to stop the cars. But now we've come to the realization that them cars must be stopped. And I've been told that they will take pictures of these cars now. That being said, that usually stops all of this kind of silliness, because once you have a picture of somebody, they don't like that. They were caught doing something bad. So I hope I answered your question.
You know, I understand it better with your comments there.
We will, I'm sure administration are aware of the issue of vehicles driving through the barricades and through these hazards, and I know Blair and I have had some conversation about that. And
one of them told me they were threatened. And I was quite shocked by that myself, because they have threatened me in front of my house, but threats to me are they're not strong.
Your Worship, we are aware of that. Our staff were not directed to let people through, but I also didn't want them laying down in front of a vehicle to stop it. I don't think that's appropriate either. It is amazing to me that we have some people, and a very few, that would go around a barricade, drive through a park to get around it and go. At that point, a city employee cannot run out and bang on the door and do that. I mean, it becomes a legal issue then. I did ask them to take pictures of the license plates, take pictures of the people. We would pursue it, and we are pursuing that right now. People do not like their pictures taken. They think they have the God-given right to drive around and cause problems, which they don't. Whether it was on the 108th or whether it was on 17th or the 102nd, it amazes me that a road closure is a road closure. I had the opportunity to serve in the provincial government. When the Ministry of Transportation put up roadblocks, you don't deal with that. It seems that people in the city seem to have a different view, and we're going to correct that.
Yeah, if the road was washed out and there was a hazard and somebody ended up in a significant event, injury, or somebody injured or killed, it would be certainly an issue for us, and I think we'll certainly take that seriously in addressing it. And on your point, I think, John, for us, when we do subdivision developments within the city, we have to come up with a groundwater plan for the Ministry of Highways and BC Rail and all the others that ensure we control the groundwater, and we're going to follow it up with respect to the Ministry of Transportation and Highways as it relates to how they've changed the flow of that creek and that waterway from the construction of the bridge and what that's doing to that waterway. So we will follow it up from the perspective of your perspective, as well as for ours as a city and what it's doing to the infrastructure of our city. So Blair will be following this up, and we've had discussions with Kevin and Blair about it, and they will be following through with the ministry.
So you get back to me on whether you'll replace this cement in my ditch, right?
So certainly that's not a question at this point that council is going to address. Administration will do the investigation in terms of water flow and all of that, and then bring that back to council.
Okay. I appreciate an answer back though on whether you're going to redo that. So if you're not going to, I have to try to find funds for that. And that being said, I'll have to have it, time to do that. So the sooner that we understand what you're going to do and what I have to do, the better it is for me.
Yeah.
Right? So,
thank you.
And John, if you could get me those numbers once you've talked to the people, thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks for coming in this morning.
Thanks for your time again. God
Thanks,
bless
John.
you. Be safe.
Our next delegation this morning, 2.2, we have Krista Nguyen Forshner and Kagan Bono, a community care crew from Dawson Creek in attendance with a request of council. So Kagan and
Kagan was out there.
Can we have them both sit at the delegation table? Or is that allowed, just one?
If they sit at each end of the table, they...
Just in order to accommodate the social distancing, we need you at one end of the table each, just to...
She doesn't mind sitting behind.
Okay, perfect. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning.
Krista, Kagan, welcome. Thanks for coming this morning.
Krista and Kagan here.
Yes?
So we're here on behalf of the community care group in Dawson Creek. It was kind of something that not necessarily just Kagan and I, but a lot of members of the community decided to step forward and do something about some of the vandalism and things that have been going on around our community. It's things like even just doing weeding or seeing ruts in the grass at the parks, or seeing things written on buildings, or seeing crosswalks being vandalized, things like that. So we see things like that, and we have kind of realized that kind of Kagan and I are a little bit powerhouses in this. We get pretty excited about things, and we realize that we're kind of two people that can really push something like this forward in the community. We need to take responsibility and accountability as a community and ourselves. It may not be us, but it is people within our community and throughout that are doing these things. It kind of just goes to show the morale in the city sometimes. I have a lot of people telling me that they moved out of this town because of ways that they were treated or things like that. I feel the exact opposite, actually. I've been a member of this community my entire life, and I've only moved away, I'd say, for approximately 1 year of that 30 years. Don't hate me. But yes, for that 1 year, I noticed that living in a big city doesn't necessarily need to be any different than living in a small city. The things that I see in this community are big city all around, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Big city values, like we care about each other in a whole. but we also let small things break us down a little bit. It takes one bad thing for everybody to start seeing what's going on around here, and unfortunately the negative things tend to get more liked than the positive things around the city. We want to change that. So we're hoping that this would help us become, in a ways, a society, so that we can, as a community, as members, we can all take accountability to change things, and not put it solely on the city's shoulders. You guys do enough for us in a lot of things. But as citizens, as people that live here, we need to take accountability for what our community members are doing to this city, what they're saying about this city, and how it's making things change. I believe that all it takes is one society, one small group of people to make a huge change. So things like painting murals as opposed to painting over things. I've had a couple, I'm not going to name names right now just because I've had a couple of business owners saying that in the past vandalism doesn't stop if you just paint over it with a gray wall or a white wall. They will do it again. You're just giving them a new canvas. So speaking to many artists around town, because Dawson Creek is a beautifully huge and diverse arts community and cultural community, and from day one, 30 years, I've never seen a more diverse community, a more accepting community. I think that something like this, we can come together. It's a lot easier. I have people always asking me, well, what can I do? Here's money, what can I do? And honestly, like throwing money sometimes just doesn't always help the situation. We need your guys' help to be able to do things the right way. Because if we aren't doing things the right way, then we're just like anybody else vandalizing the buildings or places around town, or so be it. So to have the council on our side, as well as the community, we would just love to show, rather than painting over things in a gray whitewash way, we would love to show the diversity of our community in ways. We have so many artists and so many people that are passionate about this city, in this city, living here right now, that are willing to, I've had people come out of the woodwork telling me, paint my building, please, I would love that. My walls are so boring. I can't paint though. I don't know anybody that paints, or I don't know anybody that gardens, but I would love to see my planter in front of my building look better than it ever has. And I find it so easy to go on a walk and you see something that looks yucky or whatever, you pick it up or you fix it, and it takes 2 seconds. And if everybody took those 2 seconds every day, then this town wouldn't have to worry about vandalism or garbage on the streets, or having to do big huge city cleanups, because it would just always be clean. And it's a place where we want to live forever, and this is where I have chosen to stay and raise my family. My family's been here for a really long time, as well as my family has come from other parts of the world, and this community has been nothing but accepting, and has always shown me, as I'm sure many of you that have lived here too, has shown you that a small town doesn't have to have a singular small town value. We value every single person in this town and what culture they bring to us and what kind of diversity they bring to the city, because that's what this city is about, and I really, really feel that strongly. So I think small things like painting a pretty picture on top of some bad words, small things like that can make a difference. Bringing a scrub brush out somewhere to clean it up, talking to possibly business owners that they can't do it on their own. None of us can do it on our own, but if we do it as a community, I think it's a lot easier. Yes, absolutely.
And just to add in, we would like to see the youth that are partaking in some of this vandalism be part of this.
Yes.
We'd like to work with the Kiwanis and with the schools and different organizations to make sure that the ownership isn't just on the adults who are in this community, but we're bringing it back to our kids and making it so when they get older and have kids, that they look around this community and have pride and are able to walk down the streets and say, when I was younger, I helped make that, or I helped build that. We planted that with you. So that's what we want to do as we move forward as a society, with the help of the city and the business partners, to just make Dawson Creek a more beautiful place than it already is, a more loving place, and a fully inclusive community, and that everywhere you walk in this town, you can see that.
Yeah, a little bit of everybody around this town. That's huge, and that was one thing too. I reached out to a few friends that are very prominent artists in town, and they said that they would love to do the art, but as well as do the art next to someone that wishes to learn, because then there's people learning things, they're learning techniques, they're learning community values, what's really important to them as they grow up, because those were things that were really instilled in me, but some people don't have that growing up, unfortunately. But I think that if we show as a community we care about every single person in this town, every one of these kids deserves to have a bit of a way to express themselves, not negatively, a way that the city is encouraging them to, show the good part to them.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
It's first of all, it's refreshing to have somebody come into our council that's not asking for us to do something, but bringing forward the community spirit of citizens. So we appreciate you guys doing exactly that. Council question? Councillor Earl, Councillor Parslow.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you both for being here today. Sorry, I've been told my voice doesn't carry in these microphones.
That's okay, I can hear you.
I had to get dressed down by Josh over there. So yeah, I mean, to echo the mayor's sentiments, I commend you both on wanting to be proactive about improving our community, and I know as an elected representative here, there's nothing more frustrating than to see the hard work of so many undermined by a few inconsiderate people, and to have that reflect on our city. And obviously in the age of social media, that shows up on someone's post and suddenly there's 300 people and that's all they want to talk about. So to the exclusion of all the good things that go on in this town. So just so I'm clear, just a couple follow. So you are pursuing nonprofit status, or you currently have nonprofit status?
We don't have nonprofit status. We are pursuing that. It's something that is very important to us.
Okay, and specifically, is there a specific ask, or is it just kind of to let us know?
It's more, we want to be accountable, so we don't want citizens running around town painting things, because it's just as bad as vandalizing. If we have your guys' say and things like that, we don't want it to be only our decision, if that makes sense. We want everybody in town to be able to say, yeah, this is something I'd love to see, or this is something I wouldn't love to see, and we want everyone to be involved. So
Yes.
Yeah.
Jeremy, to answer your question, the ask is that we get a clear understanding of what council and the city needs us to do, to take steps before we go out as a group to do any cover-ups and cleanup. We want to make sure that we're making sure the unions are okay with whatever we're doing, and that the city is very well aware of the foreign organization. So.
Thank you for that clarification.
Councillor Parslow?
My question's been
All right, good. So I think the issue for council would be, as we're dealing with anything that's going to involve city property, a city facility or a city amenity, then would require our administration then to be able to be involved in that direction, ensuring that it's appropriate for us to have a community organization do that work and what it is going to be done. Blair?
I think, Your Worship, we're happy to work with your group. As you move forward, you get your nonprofit, but even as you are working towards that, I get the feeling that you're anxious to do things. We're happy to engage with you on any of the ideas you have. If it is city property, certainly we'll communicate. If it's a private property issue and you want to just say, hey, look, we're going to take, maybe there's a theme to the paintings you're talking about, but I certainly am open to work with you, and if it isn't myself, it'll be a member of our staff, and we will make sure that we work together, and your attitude is amazing. Thank you.
awesome, thank you.
So I think perhaps the letter of support back to the community care group, if we do anything, is to be able to provide that letter of support to them as they move forward with community initiatives to work with our administration. Blair, do you think we need Brenda?
Your Worship, I think that we will work closely together, and I can bring information back to different council meetings as new initiatives are undertaken, and we'll report that way. I expect that we'll see this in the future where, as I said, whether it's painting over something, doing some mural, putting something forward, there's just so many things that can happen in a community when we have people engaged. I think it's going to be a project that we'll talk about quite a bit in the future to come, but mostly based on project development and issues that are being dealt with by the group.
Yeah. I was just thinking about if you have something back from council as a support for them as they're working and reaching out into the community. Brenda?
Yeah, through your worship, delegation requests should be dealt with in mayor's business later in the
Right.
meeting.
I was just trying to get in front of us today whether there is a need to have a letter of support under mayor's business for the work that they're going to be doing as it relates to moving out into the community. And people say, well, where are you getting the authority to do this or propose this or something, that they have that support from council. Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, I think you're correct. We should do something like that. But I think also, just from past histories, not within this community, just general knowledge, it's good to work out, as Blair has intimated, some protocols. Because sometimes some things can go off on the wrong track, so it'd be good to have some protocol between the city and yourself, covered by a mandate, if you like, that council could offer.
Yeah. Good. We'll move it forward into mayor's business. And Councillor Wilbur, you had one last?
Just quickly, I want to thank you, and I think some of this may have stemmed from the skateboard park and stuff that was going on there. So I just want to give you the advice that don't recreate the wheel. So look at what other communities have done with those types of facilities, and there's some really unique, artistic and very inviting things. So don't beat yourselves up over trying to restart something. Look at what already's been done and see how you can build from there.
Thank you so much for coming in again. We really appreciate your guys' initiative as citizens. Very refreshing.
Well, we really appreciate you guys listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
Thanks, you as well.
Delegation 2.3 is Joanna Martins and Curtis Nguyen from the Kiwanis Performing Arts Center.
Well, I know you will. Pull a chair now.
Good morning.
I feel like we're getting called into the principal's office.
So we can just, if you have each at one end, just so we make sure we maintain that social distance, it'd be terrific, and we're good to have you go. Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning. How is everyone?
Great.
Yeah. So, of course, you know who we are. We're from the Kpac. I'm Johanna, and this is Curtis. Curtis came on to the Kpac here in, I guess, about just March-ish. Well, maybe right before COVID hit. We were able to get a really great, awesome grant through Creative BC to hire him to be our theater coordinator. So now he's kind of taken over running our theater and a bunch of stuff, helping us with marketing. So yeah, so we're really excited. So we just wanted to come today and do a little presentation about where Kpac is at. We've had lots of kind of changes. Of course, lots of people have had changes throughout the COVID world. So we are also doing some COVID changes. I'm going to grab this. Which one is the, I'll let you do the button. So the future of Kpac. So we are always looking to the future at Kpac here. We have, like I said, through COVID, had a really cool opportunity to apply for lots of different grants that really helped us to move our programming forward in a new way. So starting in the fall and already now, we have started to launch a lot of online programming. So we're looking at ways that if COVID hit, so what happened with us, of course, you know, when COVID hit, we had to shut down the whole center and we had to cancel all of our programming, which was really devastating to a lot of families and kiddos that had put a lot of hard work in. So we wanted to make sure that in the future, we never have that issue happen again. So all of the programming that we're going with and our platform that we're working with will allow our teachers to be able to offer programming online, as well as it'll be an accompaniment along with their in-person classes that they're doing. So for instance, if we have a dance class, all of our kids can be dancing. If COVID hit, the teacher can continue offering those classes through our platform that the kids could be participating in at home. So it kind of gives us some options down there. So we're really excited that through this COVID, we were able to find some grants to help us to build this, which also means on the technological side that we are putting in cameras and the ability into all of our rooms. We're kind of high-teching everything out so that when our teachers do come back, all of the technology is there. They just simply log in and they go. We're working towards also now teching out all of our meeting spaces as well. So of course we know lots of people are needing meeting spaces and spaces to go and have their AGMs or various different meetings. And so we're really trying to, again, get ahead of the curve, have that technology already put into our center so that when people want to rent our space, they can come in, have maybe half of their members at their meeting, but then we have the rest of the technology kind of covered in there. So again, it kind of really started making us think of how can we stay relevant, how can we stay, you know, in business. Well, these changes in our world are happening to us. So those were kind of some exciting things that happened. The other really exciting thing that came up for us is we had an opportunity to expand our programming, and we've expanded it into now a dojo. So we'll also be offering now in the fall and when we get going a full karate school. So Bill Dufour had run a karate school in our community for a number of years, happened to be selling it, and I happened to see the ad and kind of got a crazy idea and thought, well, what if we put this into Kpac, since we had some space that was underutilized. And so it kind of all serendipity worked out that we were able to purchase the dojo. We have 4 teachers that are coming from that school to continue to teach for us. And what it does for us at Kpac is now it expands our programming, but it also expands it to the point where we will be offering then 12 months of the year programming, where typically now we offer 8 months of the year programming. So this is kind of cool. So this is a real huge opportunity for us to increase our revenue as well as our year-round programming. So it's really exciting that that just again fell into our lap. So COVID was really grateful, or it was kind of cool for us, I have to say, in a lot of ways that we got to do these changes. Along with all of these big changes as well has come, you know, the opportunity to get public Wi-Fi in our building, which is something we've been fighting for a long time. So we are happy to say we actually have public Wi-Fi. However, at this point, we aren't encouraging people to come in and stay and sit in our building, but it's still a good win for us, something that we've been working towards. So we've been pretty busy at Kpac.
Yeah. Next one?
Yeah.
I know. You got it.
So where we're wanting to go in the future. So these are the things that we've currently have been doing since we've been shut down through COVID and this year. So there's some things that we want to continue working on and continue growing with. So we want to always make our space a very inclusive space. So we've got a couple of projects that we've been working on to do that. We've always want to, you know, think ahead of the curve. So coming up with collaborative workspace, we do have some empty spaces that, you know, we kind of thought down the road that might be kind of cool that if we offer and open them up to, let's say, people that are working remotely that maybe need a space to come and have, that they want to rent for a few hours to have their meetings or just a space to work. So we're thinking of, you know, different things there. Expansion to our daycare. Our daycare is, you know, a great service to our community, but we've been really thinking hard over this past year about expanding our care into the infant toddler, because that's a huge need for our community. So we're kind of thinking about ways that we can do that, which would offer, again, expand some of our services there. So we're always thinking about the future. We're always trying to be progressive. Along with that, and some of the work that Curtis has been doing, is we've also moved into a lot of video, live streaming events and different things like that as well. So just like you folks here are doing all of your council meetings on live streaming, when we do our events, we're trying to do that as well. And so we've tried to work with lots of different community partners, and we worked recently with the South Peace Community Arts Council in putting in a really cool multiculturalism event with them, which is a series of videos. So again, just lots of different things we're thinking of in the future. So how can the city of Dawson Creek help? So first we're here, we have a couple of asks that we are wanting to ask from you folks. So our first one is our Pillars of Our Community project. So this is a project that kind of was a thought that came out of a meeting that I attended last year, and I think Mr. Mayor, you were at that meeting too, around that we had the Minister of Anti-Race and Hate, I believe, that came and did a thought. And you talked a lot about the fact that of what we need to do in some communities is create and turn some of our spaces into more welcoming and inviting spaces. And so that really made me start thinking about our center at Kpac and how sometimes it can look very institutionalized. It's a beautiful building, I absolutely love it, but from the outside it can be intimidating for some people to come into our building. So I thought, well, what are the things that maybe we can do to help make it more inclusive? So this idea for Pillars of Our Community kind of came about. So in our lobby at Kpac, go to the next one. In our lobby at Kpac, we have got a number of structural pillars that are just nice white pillars holding up our building, doing their job. And so I thought, well, what if we turned each one of these pillars into a story pole? That kind of was a story that represented different cultures of our community. And so then they can be painted by professional artists from our community, because we've got a number of wonderful people here that are professional artists, that they can paint these pillars and maybe do a collaborative project where they connect with, whichever groups we decide we want to connect with. And they can collaboratively come up with an idea of how they want to paint and tell the story of their community. So our idea for this has really kind of taken off. We did apply for some funding, so we ended up getting $5,000 worth of funding to go into this. The idea behind the project is that we only paint and do as many pillars as we can kind of afford right off the bat. So we did get this $5,000, which we potentially could paint up to 3 pillars. We've kind of put some asks to artists to see what it might cost. But of course, being a city-owned building, our ask to the city is, of course, that you folks maybe give us the blessing and the go-ahead that we can move forward with starting to look for artists and go forward with painting these pillars in our lobby. So that's our first ask that we have from the city. And our second one that we are going into is something that I know has been brought up to council in the past before, and it's an ask around the empty green space lot that kind of sits in behind our daycare. So our daycare is, of course, runs at full capacity. We have about 40 kiddos in our daycare when we're running at top speed. And our little kind of outdoor space that we have is kind of small for the kids that we have and the number of kids. So we do take a lot of our kiddos out to the different parks and the different spaces. But right in behind us is a beautiful, well, no, I shouldn't say beautiful, but an empty green space lot that potentially, if we could include this into our Kpac lease, that this would be a space then that we can expand out towards. So our next slide. So here we go. So we've got our happy little kiddos on our little lot there. So this is the lot, like I said, that's directly behind us. At this point, what it's used for is people to drive through. People, for some reason, like to drive it as a shortcut to the back alley there. But it's just sitting empty and not really doing a lot. But like I said, for us at Kpac, if we could expand our area and our green space, we could expand it into some more daycare area. Some of our thoughts is that if we had this space potentially down the road, we could also look at expanding our services like we had talked about with our daycare, and eventually maybe raising the money to put a different secondary building, like a portable building of some sort, so we can again increase our daycare spaces and increase our revenue. And the one interesting thing that I found when I was talking to some of our city members with Ross and Melina, we had a meeting around this lot a while ago, when they came to us afterwards, that did you know that that little parking lot that is right over there was designated Kpac parking? So to me, it makes sense that if that little lot over there, which was parking, was designated as Kpac parking, and then we have this little empty lot sitting there, and then our daycare, that it just makes perfect sense to me that it all just come part of our part and parcel, so that eventually, again, like I said, we could clean up that green space, we could, have our kiddos put maybe a little garden out there, but then eventually what we could also do with that parking lot is create a nice walking path so it connects it then to our facility, because for us having that extra parking, it would be wonderful. The parking lot itself is not in the best of shape, but potentially down the road, it would be nice to have a parking lot, because we do take up, when we have full programming in the winter, quite a few parking spaces out front and down the street around that. So those are kind of our two asks that we're asking from City Council, is to, one, like I said, give us our blessing around our pillars, and then to talk about the potential of including that green space lot into our lease that we are. So everybody, thank you so much for listening to us this morning. Chris, do you have anything else to say?
I think that's it.
Good support.
Thank you, Joanna. Thank you.
Yeah.
Questions? Councillor Parslow?
I appreciate the multicultural side of what you're looking at, for sure. And I'm not asking for you to answer this question right now. Just a caution. Be careful about cultural appropriation. Make sure that you have the right people involved. And I like the concept. It's a good beginning. There's so many ways of embracing it, but I certainly appreciate the sample image, and that does appeal to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Earl?
Thank you, Worship, and thank you guys for coming in today. It's good to have an update. With respect to the pillars, I think that's a great initiative. Just wondering, did you explore just trying to visualize what it'll look like and the durability and all that? Did you guys look at paint versus like a decaling? Like have a painting deckled and then wrapped as opposed to just straight up painted?
That money would be going to the artists as well.
Yeah.
Obviously, as opposed to finding licensing for something to print. So it's kind of a sort of full round.
Okay.
The artists themselves would get paid. Obviously, looking at durability too.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I mean, it's kind of 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Exactly.
Paint fades, but decals tend to get picked at, especially.
Yeah. High traffic areas as well. So.
Thank you. Further comments? So, thank you. So we'll bring back the request under Mayor's business and deal with it under later in the agenda.
Yes, so you guys have a full agenda today, so
Yeah.
we'll keep you.
Thanks for coming in. It's
All
good
right,
to have you
thank
guys
you.
here.
Thanks, yes.
Item 3 is our councillor business, new councillor business. 3.1, Councillor Kemp, the community care group, who were here. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Your Worship. I know we're bringing it up later under Mayor's business, but I just wanted to throw my name out there. I'd really like to work with this group, even reporting back to council what they're doing, or, that kind of thing. I like their initiative. I like what they're doing. So I just wanted to let you all know that I'd love to work with them if I could have that opportunity.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think honestly it's a community organization that's volunteer, so I think it's perfectly appropriate, and appreciate you bringing it forward.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know I'd love to work with them and help out as well, kind of on their initiative.
Thank you.
Okay.
And also, item 3.2, you have the possibility of cameras being installed throughout Dawson Creek.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up a couple things. On Alaska Avenue on 15th and 17th, I think we all know those are quite high traffic areas, and there's been some issues with, people running red lights, different things like that. So I kind of like two-part thing. The first one was I was wondering what the possibility might be of speaking with the Ministry of Transportation about having cameras placed at those intersections. I don't know if that's ever been kind of brought up after kind of looking at the traffic research that was done. Those two are pretty high traffic areas. So I don't know if that's a possibility. I just kind of wanted to put that out there if that's something that might be. And then kind of on an other side, I think we all know that there's been quite a bit of vandalism happening. The police station was targeted a bit ago, as well as the side of the movie theater, and there's been a bit of vandalism showing up. And I'm just wondering, I was doing some research, kind of what other municipalities are doing, and the one I came across was Williams Lake has installed cameras within their community. I actually, just on a recent visit down south for my son's medical appointment, we actually stayed at Williams Lake, and I was able to see, and they've put cameras throughout their community for stuff like this. And I'm just wondering, again, what the possibility would be to research and see, funding-wise, if it's possible to put cameras around in certain areas within our city.
Okay. So 2 questions, I guess. The red light cameras for intersections is one, and then the closed circuit
Cameras kind of throughout.
throughout the community.
And I'm hoping, those will be beneficial and assist the RCMP, that type of thing.
Okay.
Is it a possibility that, they'll have, the RCMP will have access to those cameras and be able to assist them with things that are happening within our community?
Okay, so we'll be making a motion for council to consider installing red light cameras at
15th and
15th and 17th Street, as well as installing closed circuit cameras throughout the community.
Yeah.
Okay, and so do I have a seconder? Councillor Parslow, discussion? Councillor Parslow?
I appreciate Councillor Kemp bringing this forward. I believe, my recollection is that the issue of cameras at 15th and 17th was brought by myself to council some time ago. So there may be some information on file, but my recollection is it didn't get much of a discussion, other than it was because the Ministry of Transportation, it's a provincial, Alastra Avenue is a provincial road, but if you think about it, there's 4 intersections. It might be a partnership between the city and Ministry of Transportation. But I can echo what Councillor Kemp just said from discussions with my RCMP family. These traffic, I'm just referring here to the 15th and 17th Street, also not only as it dealing with traffic issues, can also help with solving crime. So yeah, I will be definitely voting in favor, working towards this.
Thank you. Blair, can you tell us if if there's the jurisdiction, and is it a city decision to be able to install them?
No, I believe it is Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. We can engage them in a discussion. Having lived on that side of town for many, many years, the intersections that are being discussed here today are problematic. Traditionally, people in such a rush, they try to get through the amber light or red light, as luck would have it. But we can engage in a discussion with the ministry and see where that takes us, Your Worship.
Okay. The other thing that would be really interesting to me also would be, I know that ICBC tracked the crash data for those high incident intersections, and that would probably be good information for us to have as well in terms of understanding where the high incident crash locations are for us and creating that traffic hazards for us. So, Councillor Earl, you had a question?
With respect to the closed circuit camera piece of just the process for this, because it's a capital ask that would then become operational. Just looking for some insight into, if number one, has this been explored before, and two, what costs are associated before I commit to pursuing that.
I think what we would have to do, I'm unaware that it's been pursued before. So what we would need to do is to pull a report together to bring back to council with the associated both capital and operational costs as to how these would be placed, and if council so wished, how many they would like and what locations.
Well, and
so that's exactly what the motion would do, is we would direct administration to bring back a report on the feasibility, costs, operating capital for both the red light cameras as well as this closed circuit. Go ahead.
And within that report, it would also be appreciated if we could get some preliminary feedback or insight from our local RCMP detachment as to whether or not, how in their professional opinion, in what circumstances is that helpful, useful, and is it something we could, if we deployed, they would find helpful.
All right.
Get their insight on their
Thank
take
you.
on it, I guess.
Councillor Wilbur?
Through you to staff, I'm just wondering, are the cameras that they have on the curling rink, are they owned by the city, or do the curling club install those?
I believe those are city-owned cameras right now. There's 3 or 4 along that side.
Okay, so we do have some data in-house then too?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we'll bring it back under mayor's business. Oh no, it's passed. No, it is under council. My mistake. Sorry. Item 3.3, Councillor Javetkov put forward a letter in regards to the high volume of traffic at 17th Street and Alaska Avenue.
So this is basically the same issue. I'll just read my thing there. The intersection at 17th Street and Alaska Avenue is especially dangerous due to the high volume of traffic, and I'd like to put forward the following motion. And I believe there was a report done here, I think ICBC and Highways and the city. Did we not do a report here in the last 2 or 3 years? And I think these intersections are all recorded as high accident frequency, and this 17th Street was probably the worst one. Anyways, you know, something has to be done with them. We've been talking about them for the last probably 15 years that I'm aware of, and you know, cameras have been talked about, various things. So I'd like to make a motion that a request be made to the provincial government regarding the intersection of 17th Street and Alaska Avenue to increase the duration of the yellow light and to add a pre-warning sign on the approach from the north to warn of the light changing to red.
Thank you. To have a seconder for the motion. Councillor Wilbur. Discussion. Councillor Javetkov.
So we had a personal issue here a couple weeks ago, and my wife took pictures of the truck and put it on Facebook and called the owners, the company. And one of the comments that we got back was that the amber light should be lengthened out. And I don't know, you know, how that works, but I went and timed the light there. It was 3.5 seconds. So the amber light is on for 3.5 seconds, and realistically, I don't know if a truck coming into that intersection at 50 kilometers an hour, when that light changes to amber, if 3.5 seconds gives them enough time to stop. You know, but somebody in the provincial government must know that kind of stuff. There must be experts that look at that. So that was one of the issues that came up, and you know, these are just suggestions from a layman. I don't know if these things can be done or not, but somebody should be doing something. You know, we've studied it, we've looked at it, we've talked about cameras, this has been ongoing for a long time, so it's time that something is done here before somebody gets smoked there again.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur.
I just want to add to that too, that it's not just the traffic coming to a stop, but it also affects the crossing of pedestrians have the same amount of time based on those lights changing. So there's worse things are going to happen if a big truck, and you're right, Paul, they can't stop in 3 seconds. And anyone that's taken an air brakes course would know that, never mind their class 1. They're 10 times heavier when they're loaded, so they can't stop. But my concern is not just, you know, regular pedestrian traffic, but we have a school that's up at the top of that hill too. So we have students that are crossing there too, and they have gotten stuck partway across the road. So with that length of time, and I think the ministry's got to look at that, it's not just traffic flow coming into the city, it's that it's also a high pedestrian area with a school zone at the top of the hill. So I think those are points that we need to make too.
So I will interject. 50 kilometers an hour, you can stop in 3 seconds. That's 120 to 150 feet back at 30 miles per hour. You're traveling about 40 to 50 feet per second at 30 miles per hour. You can stop at 50. You can't stop at 70. and so that's usually the issue. The trucks come into town, they don't respect the 50, they respect 70 or 80. So to me anyway, I'm completely in support of us moving it forward to the ministry and say, look, we need to do something, we need to increase enforcement, we need to increase something in terms of slowing that traffic down and allowing that intersection to be a little bit more safe, because it is. I traveled it for 30 years, and you don't go through there until you make sure you do just because it's green. If you're heading north-south, don't make the assumption that they're going to stop. Trucks travel too fast. So, further comments, further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 3.4, Councillor Parslow, long-term contract development procedure.
Yes, I'd like council just to consider this as a housekeeping item. I'd like to make a motion that staff develop a policy on the development and approval of long-term contracts.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Earl, discussion?
I think we've had some experience with some issues with long-term contracts, and I think we need to develop some procedures that we are comfortable with living with as we discharge contracts that stem from one council to another council. And I don't wish to belabor the point. I think we all know that there's an issue to be dealt with.
Thank you. Councillor, for comments, questions? Can you give, so I guess look for direction to administration in terms of what were some of the components around that procedure that you...
Sure. Basically, a cost-benefit analysis of the contract, a risk assessment, termination procedures, dealing with capital improvements to the leasehold and so on, things such as that. And to ensure that our corporate officer and finance officer have been involved, and that council has a comprehensive understanding of the ramifications of the contract.
Okay, and is that any of that not encompassed today in the development of the long-term contracts?
Your Worship, through to yourself and council, the work on a contract is put together, negotiated. Our corporate officers engaged traditionally with that. It is then brought back before this board for approval. I believe Councillor Parslow is wanting it to follow a policy set. I can speak for the last 4 months of sitting in this chair. I think it's reasonable that when contracts are developed, those aren't developed without direction from council at the beginning. There's a direction to staff to enter in or develop a contract. So I don't believe there's a formal policy per se, as Councillor Parslow has suggested. I think that could be developed if it's the wish of council. But at the end of the day, a contract of that nature would be brought back presently to this board.
And your motion is direct that we develop a procedure for that long-term contract development?
Yes, long-term contract. I've discussed this with our staff here, because I'm not referring to, often some construction contracts go from 1 year into 2 years. I'm thinking contracts longer than 2 years.
Okay.
For sure. But I'm not referring to straightforward tender awards or building contract, which certainly are multi-year sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm talking about contracts longer than that. But I just think to safeguard concerns that I have.
Thank you. Councillor Earl?
I appreciate where Councillor Parslow's coming from, because, you know, and without going too far into the weeds, it is an issue we've had to contend with a little bit recently. I don't know. I mean, as our CAO kind of alluded to, ultimately it's incumbent upon us as a board to read and understand and approve these contracts. Now, I do think there might be something to do for policy around limiting the amount of time we can enter into any given agreement. You know, there are some agreements we've entered into that are as long as 10 years, which seems, you know, that's 2.5 terms. So I think that might be something where we can have a policy in place saying it's not, you know, it's not reasonable to tie the hands of a future government 2 terms down the road. But at the end of the day, we give staff the parameters within which to negotiate a deal, and they bring it back to us, and then we pick it apart and approve it. I don't know how much a specific policy is going to alleviate that burden. Ultimately, it's on us to either do it or not.
Thank you. Further comments? Further questions? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Minutes. Item 4.1, minutes for a regular meeting of council.
Sorry, I just had one quick item.
Yeah.
New council.
Oh, sorry.
Apologies. I just want to give the council and the city a quick update on the activities of the Northeast Regional Community Foundation. Specifically, some of the community giving they've been doing with respect to the Vancouver Foundation COVID-19's Rapid Response Fund. They had $30,000 to allocate throughout the catchment area. $7,350 went to Networks Ministries here in town. In addition, they have been tapped to administer the Emergency Community Support Fund through Community Foundations Canada. I believe I touched upon it in a previous meeting, but that was a $75,000 fund to date. South Peace Community Resource Society Reconnect programs received $5,000. Step Up and Rides received $10,000. Dawson Creek Choral Societies received $10,000. Peace Community Church, the Community Gardens have received $8,000. Northern Lights College Foundation has received $5,000, and South Peace Community Resource Society COVID Safe Transport has received $10,000. I just end it by stating that there is 1 week remaining until the closing date of the fund application, and there is $27,000 remaining to be allocated. So, any community groups, get your applications in. Northeast Regional Community Foundation, or NERF, as we've come to call it.
Chair, thank you. I appreciate the update. Sorry, Councillor, any other councillor business? I should have done that. Jumped right through it. Minutes of our regular meeting of council for June 22nd for adoption. Councillor Kemp, second. Councillor Earl, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the minutes of our special meeting of council, our strategic planning session, June 23rd, 24th for adoption. Move. Councillor Wilbur, second. Councillor Kemp, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Any business arising out of those minutes for anybody? Correspondence 6.1. We have a letter from Chris Richards, President of the Dawson Creek and District Chamber of Commerce, regarding a request for consideration of property tax exemption for the Chamber of Commerce. Councillor Earl.
Receive for discussion.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Go ahead.
So just in looking at this letter, and I mean, we've been over the tax exemption issue a few times. From my understanding, if they wanted to be exempted from property taxes, they had to apply far well in advance of this date for the 2020 year, correct?
Correct. So this would be, correct me if I'm wrong, to Flavia. Maybe Flavia, if you want to just explain when and how they could apply.
Yeah, so through your worship, we have a deadline to send out the requests approved through by law by October 30 of the previous year. So that could be included in the assessed value as an exemption and then issued by BC Assessment. So the deadline to receive all the applications would be by August. That would give 2 months for council to decide it and then grant it or not. So deadline no later than October.
So if they were applying for this year, it would be for the 2021 tax year. Yes. Any further discussion? Council, you have any further direction? Thank you. 6.2, we have a letter from James Cox, President of the Mile Zero Cruisers, request for a letter of support for the 26th Summer Cruise Show and Shine for another 5-year agreement from the city. Councillor Javetkov.
I'll move that we provide support.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur. Discussion. Councillor Earl.
Sorry to miss the show and shine this year. Look forward to it coming back next year and for future years.
Thank you. Further discussion? All in favor?
Your worship, just for clarification, I believe they are looking for a 5-year extension from 2021 forward. I believe their existing agreement lasts till 2021, so this would be 2022 through 2027.
Okay, thanks for the clarification of that.
All right.
Does anybody have any concerns or questions about that? Councillor Earl?
Sorry, this is just with respect to their letter. The second Sunday, July 12th, has previously been our annual event that they're not affiliated with. Is that, are they referring to the Music Fest, or is that there another event that?
I think there was a bit of a cruise that was organized by a group of car enthusiasts, and I don't know that it was members or non-members, but they just wanted to make it clear that it wasn't something they had organized, I think.
Okay. Thank you. Sorry.
Any further comments, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. 6.3, we have a letter from Sam Mangali, resident of Dawson Creek, regarding a request to defer the payment on 10717 Willowview. And this was an issue we dealt with at the last meeting, where we provided direction in terms of what we would consider as being deferred and what we would need to have as part of those fixed costs as part of the development. So Sam's asked to defer that other requirement we put on the motion.
Can I make a motion to receive this for discussion?
Yes? Go ahead. Move Councillor Parslow for discussion. Second. Councillor Earl. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Blair, can you want to give an overview for council?
This individual had written to council, as you indicated last time, Your Worship, requesting that the costs associated with the purchase of this land be offset and put into the future because of the difficulties he was experiencing through the COVID crisis. Council made a determination that they would waive a portion of the fee, which was the cost of the land, but to be included, and correct me if I'm wrong, Brenda, into there was shared costs that become significantly higher for any individual should they do it on their own versus as the collective group. Council at the time said they would waive the price of the land, but that they would be included within the overall cost of the entire group with the advertising and the surveying and so on. Is that, Brenda's going to correct.
Brenda, go ahead.
No, just to clarify, it's not, they didn't waive the cost of the land, just deferred.
No, just deferred it until next.
Just for clarification.
Now the individual has said, look, thank you, but could you waive the entire costs associated with this?
Thank you.
And or defer.
Thank you.
Choosing my words wisely.
Councillor Javekar?
Yeah, I'm not in favor of waiving anymore. I mean, it gets to the point where they really don't have to make a decision on the purchase, you know, for another 2 years or 3 years, whatever. This is, you know, basically ties them into the decision, and I think we need to stick with that.
Thank you. So, motion? Councillor Earl, sorry?
Sorry, so my understanding that was in our initial discussion on this issue is when we granted them the deferment, it was predicated upon an agreement to purchase, like them signing the requisite paperwork and making the requisite commitments, but not understanding that, you know, cash flow's tight for some people at this time, given the COVID stuff, we weren't going to be. Just curious to, hypothetically, and I'm not sure I'm in favor of deferring this part of the fee, if we were to defer this, what would the added cost be to the taxpayer? Would we be just, would it essentially be like an unpaid, somebody didn't pay their taxes and we just...
This is money that we've put out to pursue the development of this agreement with the Chamberlain folks for survey and all of that stuff. And that's what we're saying, you got to pay that. That's money we've paid out. We've deferred the price of the property for 1 year. Glenda?
Yeah, through your worship, the shared costs that are a cost savings at this point, or previous to this point, was advertising and the survey costs were going to be combined. That totaled $3,500. We divided that by the 30 properties, which provided a cost of $116 each. So instead of $116, any future purchase would have to pay the full $3,500 to cover the city's costs. That makes sense.
Councillor Parslow?
Excuse me, I may be in error here. Did this motion get a second?
We moved for discussion.
Yeah. Did you make a motion, or did you just make a motion?
Well, I didn't make a formal motion, but I will if that's
I wanted to, I guess Jeremy had his hand up. I wanted to do discussion first before I got the formal motion.
End run around protocol here.
Sorry, did you have further follow-up?
Just, so the $116 isn't what they're asking us to defer. It's the $4,300 deposit on the land. But that's not what they're being asked to pay, is it? They're being asked to just pay the costs of the survey and the legal and stuff like that. They're not.
So, Your Worship, the cost to an individual now becomes thousands of dollars to do it.
Yeah.
The benefit of being with the group was it reduced those costs because it could be spread over the 30-plus properties. So this cost for this gentleman will have gone up now substantially. And that was as of June 30th, was the deadline to respond.
So, motion? Councillor Javetkov?
I'll make a motion that we deny the request.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Parslow. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 6.4, the 2020 UBCM provincial appointments book regarding meeting requests with the Premier and Cabinet Ministers for the upcoming UBCM. And so normally when we're at UBCM, we book meetings if we feel necessary to meet with the ministers, the Premier. And so this year they're doing it through the technology, and so at this point we bring it forward if there's anyone has any suggestions of meetings that we should try to arrange to meet with the Premier or Cabinet Ministers. I honestly am of the view that if we have 2 or 3 key topics, key areas of the business of the city that we're looking to develop, the opportunity at spending 10 or 15 minutes with a Cabinet Minister or the Premier during the UBCM usually doesn't provide as much value as, to me, if we have those 2 or 3 key areas that we make a specific trip to Victoria if it's that important to us. And to me, the health, seniors housing, that initiative is an important one for us. Environment, flood mitigation, the flood planning is another one that's really important to us. The hospital with the Minister of Health is, so to me, I think it's, my own personal view is, having gone, I think if we see the need to arrange a meeting with the ministers or the premiers, that let's prioritize it and let's set a delegation to go to Victoria in the fall whenever travel allows us to do that, and book an in-person meeting with those 2 or 3 items that are key to us. And that's my own personal view. Councillor Javetkov?
Yeah, I agree with that. The meetings that I've been to at UBCM are, you know, just a little, hi, how are you? And and then they're moving on. I think, you know, if we've got serious issues that we need to go to Victoria and make representation.
Councillor Earl?
I'm not sure if it's our place as a city, but one thing I'd like to get some clarification from the province on with respect to the Boltry's house is, I understand there's an ongoing game of hot potato being played between BC Housing and the Health Authority with respect to who would provide financial support for this amenity from the provincial government. Everybody thinks it's a great initiative, but the healthcare folks seem to think it's a BC Housing issue, and the BC Housing issue, or BC Housing folks seem to think it's healthcare, kind of, is it not?
So it's a completely independent society operated by the South Peace Health Society. It doesn't have anything to do with Ministry of Health or BC Housing.
Or the city.
Or the city.
So you're not.
Councillor Parslow?
I just can't let Councillor Javetkov get by with his comments about the meetings at UBCM. I mean, it's been decades since you attended one of those things. So.
That's why. That's exactly the reason.
You had to open the door. You had to let him go.
Bing, next one.
I think that was an unfair characterization of this council in its past at UBCM in recent years under your management.
Yeah. So does anyone feel it would be worthwhile during UBCM for us to arrange a meeting of any sort?
I agree with Councillor Javetkov's other comments about the effectiveness of we've got 3 or 4 very important issues face to face. That's how we got, as school district, business dealt with face-to-face meetings separate from the school trustee convention.
Go ahead.
So, you know,
Saw
this,
that look in your face when I was.
this year, because we're not spending the money traveling, and it'll be a virtual meeting, I think everybody should have meetings with everybody, because they're free.
Thank you. Further discussion, further direction on this? Anyone? Thank you. So we'll, you know, I'm going to put together a bit of a focus. I'll bring back a message to council, and we'll watch the travel stuff. And I think there are two or three key issues. Housing, we're doing the housing strategy, the housing analysis now, in partnership with PRRD and seniors housing, affordable housing, all that. So I think there are two or three, and if we can get and coordinate a trip to Victoria where we can travel and meet in person, that's the most effective, and we'll monitor that over the summer and the fall. Thank you.
Excuse me, Your Worship?
Yes?
There was no motion in regards to this
No.
item? Okay.
So it's
Do you want it to receive,
Just to receive.
receive for information? Councillor Parslow, second Councillor Wilbur. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Brenda. Letter from Jonathan Cote, Mayor of New Westminster, regarding a request for support on COVID-19 data collection. Councillor Parslow?
I would like to move that we write a letter of support for disaggregated COVID-19 data collection.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl, discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah, ordinarily I have some reservations about this, but given the clear evidence that marginalized people are suffering more from the ravages of COVID-19, and that we need data on which groups have been affected, that I can see that for the interests of well-being of those people, we need to get clear data on these matters.
Thank you. Back to Councillor Earl.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would also ask that any letter we send emphasize the need for more specific data with respect to municipalities. Right now, Northern Health is broken up into Northeast, Northwest, and Central Northern Health, and that's an area the size of France. And with respect to, we know that the average life expectancy of somebody in rural northern BC is less than that of somebody in the lower mainland, and that's by a few years, and that's, I think, the result of access to healthcare. So many of these issues Councillor Parslow has cited around disparate access to healthcare and how that impacts people who are afflicted with COVID-19 will likely be increasingly felt by residents here in the north. I understand we've been very fortunate up to this point, as far as we know, in not being nearly as affected as other municipalities and parts of the country. But I do think, when we're 40 kilometers away from the Alberta border and we see the Alberta government releasing city by city statistics, and then to hit that border and suddenly, well, that's not in the best interests of people, it becomes increasingly frustrating. I understand at the beginning of this pandemic, the rationale was you don't want to induce a panic. I think we're all recognizing, though, as we settle into life with COVID, that we're in this for the long haul, and more information is definitely appreciated, and I'm only speaking for myself as an elected representative there. So
this motion, though, does not in any way insinuate that we're supporting the data collection by community. It's by racialized community members and those who experience it under marginalized barriers. So we're not talking about asking the province to break it down by community. The motion is to support the systemic marginalization of barriers to healthcare. So just for clarification, that's...
And I just cite that being in the rural north in British Columbia is a systemic barrier to healthcare.
So I'm not arguing that point. I'm just saying the motion is that we're not supporting this direction to the province or the letter, that we're suggesting that it's for racialized community members. So now if you're making an amendment to that we want to add to the motion that's being put forward by New Westminster, then
I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, well, I will move that amendment.
that we include a request into the resolution that's made by the City of New Westminster that we would request the province through Northern Health break down the COVID-19 data by community.
Yes.
Okay. Second?
I said I was.
Good, thank you. All right.
Yeah, as a
So,
friendly amendment.
on the motion, on the amendment, discussion? Councillor Javekov?
If you include that, that's specific to this district or region. If you include that with a generic letter, it'll just get lost in the shuffle. Should be two separate letters, I would think.
Further discussion
I was trying to
on the
save
amendment?
admin some work here.
Oh, don't worry
On-
about that.
Further discussion on the amendment? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And on the motion, ready for the question? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. So we're 10:28. We'll take a 7-minute break, and prior to doing that, I want to acknowledge that our in the gallery today we have our ex-councillor Duncan Malkinson. And Duncan, it's good to see you today and back in the chambers, and I'm assuming welcome home for a little bit of the summer. Good to see you. We move to item 6.6 on our correspondence, letter from Marcia Stewart, Executive Director of the South Peace Arts Society. Councillor Parslow.
I'd like to move that we defer this matter to the next meeting of council so that I can advise council about some concerns I have about this proposal.
Okay, so I have a motion to defer for 2 weeks. Second, Councillor Wilbur. All in favor?
Your worship,
Yeah.
it's just a quick, it's a month.
Oh, a month, I'm sorry, yeah, August, right. Yeah, okay.
I just don't want the Art Society to run afoul of some issues, and they need to be clarified.
Okay. Councillor Earl, you had a question, sir?
No, I was
All
going
right.
to support.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 6.7, we have an email from Anitra Paris, Operations and Policy Manager at Clean Energy BC, regarding a request to submit a letter to MLAs about the Bill 17 proposed amendments. Councillor Parslow.
See for discussion.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Go ahead.
So the primary concern in this for this group is, as I understood it, is the changes proposed by the government would prevent or make it difficult for private small generation operations. Is that correct?
Bill 17, the issue they are concerned about is the issue of self-sufficiency within British Columbia. Under Bill 17, self-sufficiency was enshrined in the legislation. That has now been presented to be removed from the bill, which would impact a couple of things. Certainly the development of power, and I think they've referred in the discussion to independent power producers over the years, and the ability to go out and purchase power on the open market. And I think people, if you follow the electricity market today, it is cheaper today to purchase it because there's a glut of energy on the market. But if you think back to the year, I'll give you an example, in the year 2000, California had rolling blackouts and was paying hundreds of dollars per megawatt hour because they weren't self-sufficient. So I think the real concern is the self-sufficiency portion, is where I read this. But it does go hand in hand with the ability for, do you contract independent power producers to bring extra power? Do you utilize Site C, for example, to bring yourself into a self-sufficiency realm?
So is part of the concern then of government, though we don't know this, because of the long-term contracts that were signed by previous government that had incredibly high prices for hydro and have made BC Hydro's rate charges higher. I'm thinking, like things like the windmill farms, or whatever you want to call the wind farms, and so on, that their rate that BC Hydro has to pay for them is many times the rate generated. They have to pay for electricity generated from dams. Is that part of the...
I believe, I understand that they are honoring those contracts. So
Yeah.
they're not breaking those. So I'll give you an example. Originally, Bear Mountain Wind Farm was the first wind farm in British Columbia. The rate that it was signed in at is higher than what it would cost today, because technology has advanced on the form over the last number of years, and I'm going to say it's probably been a good 10 years. I lose track of time since the wind farm, if not longer. So those costs have reduced significantly today compared to what they were when this wind farm, for example, was built. But again, I believe the key issue here is the self-sufficiency issue, which then in hand will go with if we were to maintain self-sufficiency in British Columbia, does Site C meet that alone, or is there a need for additional independent power producers, for example, to produce more, whether it be run-of-the-river, wind power, solar, and so on. That's my read of the letter and their request.
Okay.
Motion?
It strikes me as it doesn't order well to be dependent upon whatever's going on in the United States, for instance, as an example, as a supplier of power. So I think really the whole idea of the development by W.A.C. Bennett was the need to have reliable access to cheap power, cheap electricity. And I don't think we should abandon that. So I tend to think the idea of self-sufficiency is a laudable aspiration. So I would move that we send a letter in support of this need for self-sufficiency. It doesn't have to be tied to anything else in the letter, but self-sufficiency is, to me, an important thing.
So the motion is that we send a letter in support that we are not in favor of removing self-sufficiency.
Yeah.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Wilbur, discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 6.8, we have a letter from Raceland Van Spronson, a resident of Dawson Creek, regarding the reductions to the BC Transit system in Dawson Creek. Raceland's written a letter and offered us 3 options or suggestions.
I'd like to move receive it for information.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Kpac, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. .9, we have a letter from Lee and Carol Bowd, residents of Dawson Creek, regarding some various requests resulting from the sewer backup and home damage on the June 16th and July 1st, 2020 flood. Councillor Parslow.
I move we receive it for information.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Kpac, all in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Councillor Earl opposed. 6.10, we have a letter from Wayne and Helen Easert, residents of Dawson Creek, regarding various requests resulting from the city sewer backup into their home basement. Councillor Kpac.
Receive for information.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Parslow. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 6.11, I have a letter from William Chad Ogilvie, resident of Dawson Creek, regarding various requests resulting from the city sewer backup into their home basement. Councillor Wilbur.
Receive for information.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Kpac. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. 6.12, letter from Chris-Ann Ogilvie, resident of Dawson Creek, regarding a request for the city to address an issue resulting from the city's sewer backup into their home basement. Councillor Parslow, received for information. Second, Councillor Javetkov. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Email from Heather and Dana Emery, residents of Dawson Creek, regarding request for tree removal near their sewer line. Blair, could I get you to give us, council, our policy or direction in regards to tree removal on either city or easement?
If it is on city property, we are responsible. An individual can't take a tree down, city property or easement. What they're requesting is because of the challenge with the roots, that this tree being on our property, they're asking us to remove it so they don't have future problems, as I understand this. And I believe we've done it. I would look to Kevin in the past on occasion, but it's not I guess, one that comes to us very often. But there are some different streets that have more challenges than others, and different trees with different root systems create more challenges than others.
Is this, and is the email indicates it's on the city, on the property line by either the city or the resident property line? Do we know?
We would have to do further investigation to make sure if it was on city property or private property, your worship, and then respond to them accordingly.
And the last question for me, do we know if it's a poplar tree or a pine or a spruce? Or I would assume a poplar if it's creating roots problem.
That's been
generally?
Historically, a lot of the problems have come from those, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Parslow, Councillor.
Well, I'd like to move that staff investigate and if deemed prudent, work with the property owner to have the tree removed.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Javetkov. Discussion? And I guess the issue around two things. Is it a hazard? Is it a poplar tree that may eventually have to come down because of it being a hazard? And two, if it is roots and that is an issue, then we would work with the property owner to have it removed.
We will work on that and deal with it, your worship.
Thank you. Further comments? Further questions? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7 reports. Report number 2126 from the facilities manager regarding request for quotations for an ice surfacer. Councillor Javetkov.
Move the report number 20-126 from the Parks and Facilities Manager, request for quotations 2020-21 ice resurfacer be received. Further, that council approves the purchase of a new ice resurfacer from Weimar Equipment Limited at the bid price of $120,446 plus applicable taxes.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Earl. Funding from equipment pool.
Yes, your worship.
Yeah. Thank you. Any questions, comments from council? Councillor Parslow.
Yes, when I read this, I immediately thought about in the future, will we still be using the Tin Arena as an ice surface? I don't know the answer to that, but it is a big question in my mind. And therefore, would we need this piece of equipment? And then I read that previous equipment that's been replaced has been set aside as backup to the other, is a backup ice resurfacer. So I imagine this could serve that purpose. It wouldn't be a complete waste of money if Tin Arena was not used as an ice surface in 3 years' time or whatever.
Yes, it could be.
Yeah. So that's why I'm going to support it.
And it's a year delivery?
Oh, yes, that's another
Right.
point, yeah.
Right about that. Usually we require, this new purchase, it flows down through our resurfacers and one of them ends up obsolete. And does that happen in this situation? Do we end up with one that's obsolete?
I believe we do. I will look to Melina, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, Your Worship, we have 4 right now. One is so old that we can't use it anymore, and we shared the one that we use as an absolute backup with Canada. So we have 3 really operational, 2 that are getting extremely.
Yeah. And the obsolete one, I know in the past had one where it went to the speed skating club, I think, and so does this one the obsolete one just get disposed of through online bid?
That's what the mechanics told me, that the 2 that are sold, they're gonna put onto online bidding.
Okay, thank you. I always think about, is there other organizations in our region, our communities that have the need for community rinks and stuff like that? Do we ever explore that prior to just before we dispose of them? Like our old fire trucks, right, in the pumper? I just wondered if there's an opportunity there to reach out into some of our neighboring volunteer organizations or community groups that might have a need for it.
We can have that discussion, Your Worship. I can speak with Melina and see. I'm not sure the value of such a machine, or if the value is better in delivering it to a community group, for example. But we can look at that and pursue that.
Sometimes just worth the touch with other groups, and then council can bring it back and, yeah.
All right.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.2, we have report number 2127 from the facilities manager regarding requests for quotations on commercial containers. Councillor Parslow.
Move the report number 20-127 from the parks and facilities manager. Request for quotation 2020-19, supply of commercial containers and collection of waste from city facilities be received. Further, that staff be authorized to enter into an agreement with GFL Environmental Inc. for the supply of commercial containers and the collection of waste from city facilities at a cost of $2,326 a month for a 3-year term commencing August the 1st, 2020 through July the 31st, 2023.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Earl, discussion? Blair?
Your Worship, just a good news on this tender. It's about 50% of what we were paying. So again, a cost-saving measure, and we have a new provider taking on that service for the city.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Any further discussion or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.3, we have report number 2128 from the General Manager of Community Service regarding Kpac Park improvements. Councillor Wilbur.
I will move that report number 20-128 from the General Manager of Community Services regarding Kpac Park improvements. Request for resources be received. Further, that an expense of $1,000 for the purchase of 10 trees and 2 yards of topsoil for improvements at Kpac Park be approved.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Parslow. Discussion? Blair?
Your Worship, this is a request. Mr. Plenner was before council. There are a number of families up there that look after part of this. This is their request to try and improve some water flow through there, as well as beautify it through the use of trees as well.
Good job. Any further comments? Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 7.4, report number 2137 from the Recreation Manager regarding reopening of our indoor recreation facilities. Have you received for discussion, if we can?
Yeah.
Yeah. Councillor Parslow, second. Councillor Earl. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Blair, do you want to kick it off for council?
Certainly. Your Worship, this is a report based on what we're facing presently, not just Dawson Creek, but the world and the COVID and how we approach the different aspects. This is based on recreation for our arena and swimming pools. There is certain criteria that have to be met. We are still within a set number of people attending any function, which is 50. The protocols associated with those, the costs associated with opening the facilities, how they would be dealt with, and in what manner. I think this report is fairly in-depth, hence the length of it, but there are a lot of moving factors in this. You will note that there is a startup, and to evaluate following the first 2 weeks and 4 weeks. A lot can change in the changing world we're in. all of this, it isn't just up to the city of Dawson Creek or any city. It is, we have to meet the health requirements, the provincial health orders. We cannot go outside of those, and our staff have been working, and as of today, I'm not sure we've heard back, but I know that we have both Shantae and Melina here to answer questions as well. But a fairly in-depth report, and I expect some questions and discussion on this.
Thank you. Council? Councillor Parslow?
If I may, I have lots of questions. That's okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Well, thanks for the report. A lot of work's gone into that, and I appreciate that. So are you going to sit down, Shantae, or?
I'm just her backup.
There was a typo on one page. This is a handout. It's also been emailed to you as well.
I don't. Oh, I've never seen this. I don't think I read that.
Thank you.
So my first question, whoops, and it's really not something that I expect Shantae to be answering, but more Blair.
I'll do my best.
I know you will. My question is related to contagion coverage. Okay? And of course, with our mayor's background in insurance, I'm sure you have some expertise to lend to this as well. So essentially, to enable groups to use facilities, the MIABC, or whatever they call themselves, has said that user groups will not need to have insurance for the contagion, COVID. So what happens if somebody, and because if we're all trying to keep COVID out of this community, someone gets COVID, it's traced back to the swimming pool. And the individuals choose to begin litigation, right? Does the requirement of no contagion coverage, right, by any of the groups using it apply to individuals as well as groups? Because it said any groups use it. So I understand, like the SEALs is a group. They would have a user form. It would be filled in. They will follow the procedures to protect everybody that have been lined in the documents they've received, presumably from swimming pool staff. Okay, so now I'm an individual, I'm not associated with any identified group. I don't have to sign any form. I don't. So what's our liability if some group, a member of a group or an individual, I don't understand this, there's a void here, there's no insurance coverage. So what happens? Can somebody fill us in on that?
Well, I'm going to look to Melina or Shantae to answer that.
Your Worship, from our understanding from the information is that we have some type of insurance until December 31st, which falls into our insurance as a municipality. And I'll have to get the wording and that information for you through the Municipal Association and to confirm that that's correct. So what we do is basically when you come in, you have to pre-register for our programs, and then we would know who you were. We do the pre-check with you to make sure that you do the pre-check, but there's no guarantees. I mean, we could go to the grocery store and I could be picking up lettuce or I could be picking up something, and I could also get that from that tracking, from that we can't guarantee. I mean, with the way it is, we can't guarantee that we can't get it either at the pool, at the grocery store, picking up our mail. So at this point, from what I understand, is there is something until December 31st, but after that, they'll have to look at the insurance within that, because there is no contagion after that with the municipality. but the individual user groups are not able to get the continuation. So that's why we did the addendum, as per MIA's suggestion.
And protocols that we follow are based on the provincial medical health officer's recommendations on what are practices you must employ in order to ensure the safety of the users and the residents. And so I think as long as we follow those practices, then it would be very difficult for anyone to determine negligence on the part of the facility operator that would ultimately then determine the liability of that event. So we follow the protocols as set out by the provincial medical health officer to ensure we have safe practices in place.
Further, the other thing that MIA had stated in the calls that we were on is it's going to be pretty difficult. Their doctor has stated it's going to be pretty difficult to be able to come back and find that as long as our protocols are in place for us to say loud.
Okay. So second question, who are the groups you consulted with for the swimming pool? I assume SEALs would be one group, but any other group?
We've been in contact with Patrick as well, just to let him know that we'll be opening up. He is Dartfish.
Okay.
And then the other one that we have not been is the Kpac group, which is Trevor Smith, but we've been in contact with the 2 out of the 3. And definitely the SEALs definitely would like to be back. They'd prefer to be back as soon as they can be.
Okay. Memorial Arena, I'm curious to read that it costs the city $205 a day when there's no ice at the Memorial Arena. And that does not include staff costs.
So how I worked with our lovely CFO to try to figure out how we could come up with those costs. So when we came up with the costs, we divided the year into when we operated, and we divided the year when we weren't operated, and we took those costs. And so that is correct. There is dry floor when that cost is in, and there would be some staff included in that.
Oh, there would be some staff included in that.
No, that's not correct. Sorry.
I
deducted the staff out of there. No, that's not correct.
That's
There's no
fine.
staff in there. That's correct. It's just the utilities that would be charged and the telephone.
Right, so I just found that quite a surprise, because you haven't got staff costs, you're not maintaining ice, and I did read it was telephone and utilities, right? And that's, so there's nothing else, just utilities and telephone.
So we have to maintain in the winter, we have to maintain some heat in the building.
Yeah.
So that will be the cost. So that's taking an estimated cost during the winter of what it will cost to heat those buildings to make sure that they don't freeze.
Right.
Oh, sorry, Your Worship. So also included in those costs is to operate the plant. Even though the plant's isolated, we still have to circulate, and it still costs money for that circulation system. We never really turn down off the plant totally. We take the ice out. Some systems are isolated, but the system still needs to circulate, and that takes power, water, hydro to circulate that.
Yeah.
And we took the cost, we went to 2014, kind of looked at the cost when the memorial was not in operation. We had no ice in 2015 to figure out what that cost was. So we had a cost that was in January, February, March, and April. So we could kind of figure out what the heating was with the memorial in operation and try to come up with a cost.
Yeah.
So it's an estimated cost.
Yeah, don't get the wrong, I'm not challenging you, just interesting what is involved there, because that's kind of very important information. Similarly, for as it relates to kin. So I'm almost at the end. Going back to the pool. So I appreciate the fact that there's a lot of training going to be needed so that we can fulfill all the new requirements. So you have a 1 month spell for that, approximately. And then you'd have a trial period of phase 1. And then you have a phase 2. Now, I'm interested in the criteria you're going to have to determine whether we move from phase 1 to phase 2. And I just thinking that it would be, obviously, one wouldn't want to be, council, I'm sure, it wouldn't want to be an impediment here, but I think there comes a point where we have to say, well, phase 1, we obviously didn't get too much pickup by the community. We really need to revisit whether we do continue to operate the swimming pool under this cloud of COVID until maybe the province moves to phase 4. And so I'm wrestling with that. Just to be transparent, I'm really wrestling with how do you move from phase 1 to phase 2? Because looking at phase 2, and I completely accept the need for greeters and people checking and all that stuff. But what is the cost of all that? I mean, you know, the recovery rate right now for the swimming pool, in spite of all the wonderful staff and all the efforts that's been made, is only about 7%, isn't it? And I'd like to see understand, you know, how we're going to make a decision. Are we going to move to phase 2 or do we abandon it? That's what I'm wrestling with.
That's the political decision.
Yes.
That's not theirs.
No, it's not. No. You know, what would be the criteria? Because hopefully our decision would be based upon some data. That's what I'm getting at, really.
Well, and I think that's this, right? That,
maybe, yes. I have to confess, I didn't resist an addendum, then I'm going to quickly read it while other councils have.
Well, there are just two numbers that are different in there. So that's it. This sheet is part of the report you have, but the numbers are, bear with me.
On the Memorial, Kinarina.
Under the aquatic, I will go down to the COVID-19 equipment, the 5,500. Well, go ahead, I guess I'll let you. It's your
5,500 is included in the expenditures, but we just put it there so you realize that the 5,500 is equipment that we have to buy, masks and things like that for us to be at the pool. And on the opposite side, I had a miscalculation for the cost recovery of the Kinarina, and that's as if we'd open October 1st, which at this time we're not able to open October 1st with where we are within, there's no gameplay technically what we're having, so until we get to that stage, we'd stay at one arena. So I had the miscalculation, so I apologize.
Thank you.
This morning.
But to me, the major, I believe we need to get the Memorial Arena open, and I believe we need to get the pool open. And in these current situation and circumstances with COVID, it is going to be at a impact to operations in terms of how we operate it and how we function. And for the pool, it's a heavily subsidized facility as it is, even at when we're operating at full capacity. To have 40 or 50 people in the facility as a whole and operate, giving somebody the opportunity to come to the pool and swim for an hour and a half at $8 is going to be difficult. And our cost recovery at 7%, 3.5%, or 2.5%, based on whatever we charge for admission for that 1.5 hour swim. I think council, in my view, we need to get the pool open, and we're going to eat some additional costs in order to do that, to allow that amenity, to allow that facility to reopen. And I personally am of the belief that we need to do that and get some of these facilities back into operation, and the pool is one that's very, very important to our community, and it's heavily used. And I'm completely in favor of doing that at the 50% reduction on admission. So instead of $8, they go to $4, and they're only going to swim for an hour and a half, and we administer the protocols on that basis. Go ahead.
One thing, we put the hour and a half in there, but we're going to put an hour and 20 minutes, and that will give 10 minutes for them to kind of get out. So then it gives us the 2 hours to clean the facility, and then we'll go on to the next group.
Yeah. It's going to be heavily subsidized for us if we reopen it. There's just no way we can get people in there to get that normal return of revenue on fees and charges. Councillor Kpac?
So the theory of reducing the rate to 50%, assumes that people go in there and swim for several hours, 3 or 4 or 5, 6 hours. I would imagine they would be like shriveled up prunes if they stayed in there that long. What is the typical time that an individual would go and stay in the pool?
People that come and do lengths will be anywhere from an hour to an hour and 15 minutes. Could be
Okay.
longer, and the families will be about an hour and a half, I would say.
And then the kids that come in at around 4 o'clock stay until closing. So we do have people that stay up to 4 or 5 hours.
But lengths are about an hour and 10 minutes.
Somewhere.
Families are about an hour and 15 to an hour and a half.
2 hours.
So who are the ones that stay all day?
The children.
Pardon?
The children. A lot of the children will come, so parents will bring their children on a Saturday at 1 o'clock. They will not necessarily leave until 5, and they'll come and pick them.
But that doesn't apply to weekdays then.
Well, yeah, it does. So
are you a babysitting service
We
there?
are, a very good one. Where else are you gonna find good qualified first aiders and avid watchers of your children at the pool?
Counselor
So-
Dibikoff, at the age of 8, they can come and swim on their own at the pool without a parent. So we can have them as young as 8 coming in and swimming at the pool.
So if we're doubling up our services for swimming and daycare, and for people, like if we're planning on opening for an hour and a half, but people are only staying in there for an hour and 10 minutes, why would we reduce the rate? It doesn't make sense.
We're not gonna have the sauna open. We're not able to have the steam room open. The slide's not gonna be open, as well as the diving board at this time will not be open in phase 1.
Awesome.
And the showers, and they won't, at the beginning in phase 1, they are not, we're just coming through the change room. You take your clothes off, you put them, you have your swimsuit underneath, hopefully, and you take your tag and put it on a number, like on a number with the stuff. Once you're finished swimming, you can shower on deck if you wish, but then you'll dry yourself off, put your clothes back on, and walk out. So we don't have any washroom facilities as well open, like the showers open in phase 1.
Councillor
That's
Wilbur.
another reason why the discussion was for 50% reduction.
Councillor Wilbur.
I mean, yes, we're providing less services, but we also have to take into consideration that the members of our community have also been hit by COVID, so they don't have the income they have, but, you know, hopefully we can open some things up and they can start participating in some recreational opportunities within the community. So I'm fine with the 50% reduction, considering we have less services, but also the fact that families have less income right now.
And hopefully, it's only a short duration of time until we get the next phase, and maybe they broaden it to 100 people or 150, depending on what the provincial medical health officer does with it. Councillor Parslow?
Yes, you haven't talked about what I call the lazy river. What do you? Is that going to
That
be
will
open?
be open.
That would be open.
Yes,
Because that's.
part of the leisure pool.
That's Councillor Parslow's favorite part.
Yeah. His vote hinged on that.
So, further discussion?
Well, yeah, this chart here, you're not saying, and I apologize that I didn't study this, I read your report extensively, but you're not saying that it says here, estimated costs to reopen. I'm talking about the Ken Barrett Aquatic Centre, right? So I think I'm misreading this. The $680,648 is not additional costs.
No, that's within the budget. That would be within, so what Melina and I did, we worked together. I worked on the revenue side, and she worked on the expenditure side. So we took an estimate, she took an estimate of 2019 of what it's gonna cost for the rest of the year. So that's what we did. We decided, this is from when we open now until December 31st, and it's an estimated expenditure. Within that expenditure of 344,000 is the expenditures. COVID-19 is within that cost, and then the wages on top of that.
Yeah.
That's for a total of 680,648 from now until December 31st.
Right. Thank you. I thought it would be something like that, but it said estimated cost to reopen.
Yeah.
It's really for the balance of the
Sorry,
year.
that was my misclarification.
No, this is excellent work, Shantae. I'm just trying to understand it perfectly well.
Well, I'd
Thank
like
you.
to thank the staff, because it took
Yes.
a lot of our staff to put time together when we need to put together, so the staff did a lot of work, so I'm very thankful for them.
Thank you.
So you think you'll entice me back swimming?
Need a motion, Council?
I can say what I want to say.
All right.
Councillor Earl?
I will move the recommendation that report number 20-137 from the Recreation Manager regarding reopening recreational facilities be received. Further, that council directs staff to reopen the Memorial Arena as of September 8, 2020. Or does this need to be altered because you said you weren't going to be ready to go for September 12th?
She said Ken.
Oh, okay.
You don't
Sorry.
have to alter that.
Okay, my apology. As of September 8, 2020, further that council directs staff to reopen the Kpac Aquatic Center as of September 12, 2020. Further that the fees and charges for the pool admission be reduced to 50% for public swims for children, seniors, adults, and families while the facility is on reduced hours and amenities.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur. Discussion? And September 8th or earlier if available, if the ability is there for the memorial. I'm assuming that's everything goes well, right? Councillor Earl?
I just want to compliment staff on a really good report. As you mentioned earlier, the cost-benefit analysis between providing these services and taking the extra financial hit on the public subsidy end and the reduced revenues is a purely political one. I do think, given what our community's gone through over the last several months with COVID, we don't have obviously as much control over this situation as we'd like, and those things we do have control over, where we can provide some semblance of normalcy for people, especially for children, especially for elderly, people who've been isolated, people who've been whose livelihoods have been impacted. We should do that. Obviously, depending on how long the situation continues, this may be a topic to revisit for next year, because I doubt very much we have the financial capacity to provide this level of subsidy in perpetuity moving forward. We were already struggling financially with various amenities heading into this, so or figuring out how to continue paying for that. But for the moment, I think this is a great report, and the recommendation is sound.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, I have some questions, Mayor, that do not relate to the motion, but they do relate to the swimming pool. Can I ask them after this motion?
Or now, if you like.
I don't like to muddy the water. So
Okay.
I'm all for the trial, but I do not support the reduction in the entrance fee. So I'll have to vote against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Javetkov?
Can I move an amendment to change the fees to the full fee as opposed to the 50%?
I think it goes contrary to the motion. It's not an amendment to that, but it's a contrary to the motion that's been made on the floor. Brenda?
Through your worship, I think that's a judgment call, but I think the main motion is to reopen the facility, and I believe that we could allow an amendment in regards to the fee. That's your judgment call.
But the recommendation that was read to put on the floor was that the fees and charges for the pool admission be reduced to 50% for public swims. So I'm saying, I'm interpreting that's the intent of the motion, and if a councillor wishes to amend a motion, would it not? Yeah.
Through your worship, council would just vote on the amendment, then that would provide.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Javetkov.
So I'll move an amendment then to change the rate from 50% to the full rate.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Parslow. Discussion on the amendment. Councillor Javetkov and Councillor Parslow.
The comments that Melina made there about what's not open, you know, I guess my assumption is if people are using the hot tub and it's not open, they won't go there. You know, if they're going there to swim and the swimming pool is open, then, you know, that's the facilities aren't going, the slide is not open. If they're going there for the slide, they won't go because it's closed. So that would be my logic. So I guess the 50% still doesn't apply. I mean, you know, people are going there and staying for an hour and 10 minutes, but they've got an hour and a half opening. So the full rate should apply.
Thank you. Councillor Parslow?
Yes, I've been to the swimming pool when the diving boards are not open, when the slide's not operating. I mean, that's normal features for the pool. They do that from time to time. They open them up at other times. To me, the heart of the pool is there, and I just can't see the logic for that. I know there are some people who have lost their jobs, but there's ways of applying for subsidy support if they are strapped with cash. There's an application process. So I don't think the key parts of the pool are closed. They're open, and I would go to the. That's why I asked about the lazy river. A lot of people use the pool for rehab, and all that's open, and the lengths are open. So that's why I'm going to support the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Wilbur?
I'm just going to reiterate, it's not just about losing your job or applying for a grant to get funding. We're talking about families that have been locked down in their homes. They had 2 parents that were working, now they have none. And those families are the increase of applications to the food bank, to network ministries, to services at Aubert, to Spickers, have increased tenfold, if not more. It is insane how many people are hurting in our community. So if we can open up our facilities and have families enjoy some recreation and be together, it's worth the 50% discount this time around. And if nothing else, we better damn have some love for our community and our families that are hurting. And this is something they can do together. So I'll be voting against this ridiculous amendment.
Thank you. Further discussion, comments? Councillor Earl?
So just for some clarity, so the 50% fee reduction amounts to $24,000 up until the end of the year. As I said, hitting it well, I first of all, as somebody who uses the pool, I don't just go and use one amenity. So as of right now, there's 4 pools: the kiddie pool, the leisure pool, the full-size pool, and if you want to count it, the hot tub. Half of those are closed, the kid pool and the hot tub, in addition.
Hot tub will be open.
Hot tub's open? Hot's pool, okay, hot's pool, hot tub's open. And then the steam room, sauna. Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think right now, the emphasis for me is on giving people some semblance of normalcy. Come the end of the year, we'll see how we proceed, but I won't be supporting it. I think the recommendation as written serves its purpose.
Thank you. Councillor Dveka?
So this amendment, I consider it a prudent amendment. I don't consider it a ridiculous amendment. You have to realize that there are a number of taxpayers that are hurting really bad that don't use the pool. And with this subsidy, they're sharing the cost. So that $24,000, if you split it up, you know, amongst the seniors that don't use the pool, but still have to pay the price, you know, that's what we're looking at. We're running a city. We're not running a social program. So I think it's a good amendment.
Thank you. So from my perspective, the issue is get the amenity open and get the pool open and get it back into providing a recreation service. That's what we do, and I'm certainly in favor of doing that. And I look at the heavy subsidy that we're going to be faced with, whether it's 48,000 in revenue we get, which is, I'm assuming, based on maximum 40 loads every day. to reducing that to 24,000 is about $4,000 or $5,000 a month for September, October, November, and December, if we get the maximum projections. And so, to me, we're facing a heavy subsidy, and we need to get it open. And I believe that today we charge $8 for an adult to go swimming, and they can go there for 4 or 5 hours if they choose. We're not allowing them to do that. We're restricted occupancy, and I think we have to provide that opportunity to reduce the price of admission, because we're not offering the same level of service we did when we were offering $8 at the full service. So I also feel we should go to the 50% discount to get the facility open and get it back into operation. And we have no idea what that's going to look like for patrons and for our users, but the most important message is we need to get it open. I'm going to call the question on the amendment. All those in favor of reducing the 50% discount, and all those in favor? Opposed? That's defeated. And on the main motion that we open the Memorial Arena for September 8th and the pool at a reduction on the rates for the pool at a 50% discount. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Opposed, Councillor Javetko. Thank you. Thank you. Honestly, you guys, great job. It really was a fulsome report with good information that Council needed to have to be able to make a decision, and we appreciate that. Blair, you want
Your Worship, just maybe some quick closing comments. First of all, to Melina and Shante, thank you to you and your staff for the report you've put together here. Wasn't the easiest one to pull together. But it should be noted that this won't be business as usual as our facilities open. The swimming pool, for example, you will have to call and register. I think it's going to be important. You won't be able to just show up there and go swimming. Unless there is room, which I anticipate probably there won't be a great deal with only 40 patrons being allowed in the pool. So we will do our best to get that communication out for the public to understand how it will operate. It's going to be very important. I think many people may not get that full communication and show up, but we want people to be aware this is going to be a pre-book to go swimming. So
we get it open.
All right.
Thank you
very much.
I had a few questions.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Parslow. Sorry, go ahead.
So first of all, in the communication for those people who've been faced in hardship, they need to know that they could go there for free if they apply through a process. There's a process for dealing with that, and we should publish that and make sure people know. As we go to the 2021, we're going to be into budgets development pretty soon for 2021. Given we have no control over when the province moves to phase 4, but has there been any discussion about how swimming pools will operate under phase 4? And what are the differences between the phase 4 and phase 3? Have you been engaged in? I know you've had extensive discussions with various organizations. So can you paint a picture?
So I'm going to get Melina. I don't know if you guys know, she is our regional rep for the National Life Saving Society. She's the person, plus she also sits on the board. So she's been working a lot with Life Saving Society. So she would probably be better to answer that than I will.
Yeah.
So when we move from phase 3 to phase 4, it'll be back to just about normal operations. We still will have to limit the amount of people coming in, but lockers will be open, all the amenities will be open. But we're going to propose, and what we've done before is we're going to propose that we're closed always between 1 and 3 for that deep cleaning. So staff can get in and do that deep cleaning halfway through the day, clean everything. Right now, we open up on NID days as well as Christmas, any holidays, summertime. In a normal operation, we'd be open 1 to 3. We're going to ask for that time to clean. Other than that, phase 4 is going to bring us into what you normally would have seen prior to COVID.
The new normal.
The new normal.
Go ahead.
So with phase 4, then will be no limitations on the numbers of people at the swimming pool other than what we would have for safety purposes. Is that correct?
That's right. So it's a guard. It's the way we come up with numbers is we put a guard to patron ratios.
Right.
At our pool, we're a little bit stricter than the national is 1 to 40. we're putting it right now 1 to 25. We start at 1 to 25 and then move up after 25. Our pool in its configuration and how it is, one person, no matter how good of a guard you are, would have trouble seeing spread out 40 people. So we've reduced that based on our facility. You go to a square pool facility, it'd be different. So that's what we base. So based on our guard ratios, that's what we would do for numbers. Maximum numbers in the whole facility is 450, hitting all the pools, sauna, hot tub, water slide.
Right. And would it be fair to say for the phase 3 that for much of the morning and early afternoon, we don't hit the 40? The real numbers come about, ignoring weekends there, come about after school's out, right?
Well, not exactly. Between 9 and 12, we usually hit over 40, and that is because we run the drop-in program, which is really, really popular with seniors. We usually have about 15 to 20 just in that class alone. Mm-hmm. That's when family bring in their little ones because we don't have any features going. So we probably hit between, and if schools come in, book a time, we're usually right around 60. We can be as high as 60 to 70 people, and we've gone up 3 guards. So it can during that time, depending on who the payload is.
So there will be some limitations there.
There will be some limitations.
Thank you. We have to move on. Thank you. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
7.5, we have report number 2131 from the General Manager of Development Services regarding request for quotations for our water meter replacement.
I've lost my computer.
Councillor Javekov.
Move the report number 20-131 from the General Manager of Development Services water meter replacement be received. Further, that Council award request for quotations 2020-34 water meter replacement to Neptune Technology Canada Corporation for the amount of $252,425 plus applicable taxes.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kemp. Discussion? Questions? Councillor Wilbur.
Is this the same company that's done the ones that have already been put in? For you to start.
So one of the questions for me is, and it doesn't break it down, Kevin, through to Kevin, is of the 252,000, how much is that goes to labor and how much is that goes to the actual meters themselves? And the reason I'm asking that is because it seems strange to me that we don't have more uptake from our local contractors, and does the cost of the meters impact the ability of somebody to carry that cost through to if the meters are expensive?
Through your worship, I don't have the breakdown in front of me, but I know we have had in the past, we did have a local company do at least one year, maybe twice. Neptune's done a number of them. Of course, Neptune supplies the meters as well, so that's probably a bit challenging for other contractors. But they've done the work for us in the past as well, and it's been fun. So.
Yeah. I guess the issue to me is if we purchase the meters separate from the contract and then just tendered the installation, does that give our local suppliers so they don't have to carry the cost of the meters? And I don't know how many meters it is, I don't know what that value would be, but I'm just thinking about, does that create more of an opportunity for our local guys to compete?
Your Worship, that may be something we could look at. It's my understanding, I believe Neptune sells these in lots, I believe of 500 meters is how it is, or 250 meters. So that may be an option. We could pursue that for future replacements. I believe we're well on our way to having most of the meters replaced in the city at this point, Kevin, but there's probably 2 or 3 more of these. One more year?
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's kind of moot at this point. And, but anyway, just a question. Okay. Councillor Earl?
And just a question on the maintenance of these meters. That's something, how highly specialized is it to maintain these meters or work on these meters from a city perspective or another contractor's perspective? Just because when you tell me they're the supplier and also the installer, I don't want to be in a position where we've got one company that's only capable of doing work should we need some maintenance done, and we're held captive to whatever they want to charge us.
So through your worship, it's not that technical. Typically with a water meter, there's only a couple of components. There's the meter itself, there's registers, there's the wireless components. Usually, if you have a problem with it, you swap the meter out, you can interchange some components, and if need be, just send the meter back and get a new meter. And any plumber will do that.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Any further questions? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. 7.6, we have report number 2138 from the Watershed Coordinator regarding request for proposals for the 102nd Avenue crossing. Sorry.
We receive it for discussion.
Thank you. Second. Councillor Javetkov, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead.
Well, obviously I support the need for flood mitigation, and I know and I support the idea of being shovel ready, right, for availability of funds. And it's also this particular presentation highlights, to me, illustrates how good it is to set up some funds, long-term funds, for a anticipated project, because we know that we have to improve flood mitigation, and we've been proceeding along that systematically in accordance with all the requirements. My only question, and I'm looking for it here, is I see that Morrison Hirschfield stored 68.4 and Bistro Associates 66, and there's a $200,000 difference. So for a difference of 2.4, we are willing to spend an additional 200,000. What will be the objective difference in the deliverable that would warrant us spending additional $200,000?
Your Worship, I will get Kevin or Chelsea to speak to it, but in my discussions with them, the reason for the high score of the second number you brought in at 149 was the issue of price is the reason they scored so highly, not on the delivery of the project or how it was dealt with, but I will pass, which is an important part when we look at our evaluation system. You know, we put a great deal, and you always try and do the best you can for the residents based on low tender, but in all cases, taking the low tender is not necessarily the best tender to take. But
I agree.
Kevin, if you had things to add?
For sure. So through your worship, just this is a proposal, so that's why it's a little bit different, and you'll see with a proposal you'll have scoring, and it's not always the lowest price that will be the one staff recommend, because it's based on a scoring matrix. Within that scoring matrix, it's the price component is worth 40% of the overall score. So when you look at the number 2 individual, they got full marks for price because they were the cheapest. And so they got 40 of the 66 points just based on price alone. And so what that tells you is someone else that is very expensive got relatively low points for the price, but scored very well for their work plan and their approach and all those other deliverables. So of note as well, the second proponent was missing a couple of items in the proposal as far as what they're including, such as geotech and survey, so those would be added costs that would have to be added into that. So staff certainly recognized that that's quite a gap, and we chatted with Blair, Chelsea and I quite extensively just to kind of explain how that worked, and we fully anticipated there would be questions, and understandably. So Morrison Hirschfield certainly provided the best proposal. You know, we had 3 staff independently review the proposals, and then they averaged out the scores, and this is how it fell out, so.
Thank you. Very good.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Kpac.
So I had the same questions, obviously, because of the $200,000 difference. Is Bairstow not capable of designing a bridge?
What I can say is that in their proposal, that they didn't hit the mark as far as what we were looking for, and that's why they didn't score as well. I can't say whether they could or couldn't, and we don't know that we're going to have a bridge. What we've asked is for options for a crossing, because what the flood mitigation report said is that it should be a 12-meter open channel, and that we have to move part of the channel to align it up. And so we've said, bring us some options. Let's look at what it is, because a bridge may not be the most economical. There may be other options that we're not thinking of. So that's, we've asked for a minimum of 2 proposals from the proponents with cost options. So that would be kind of those initial stages. So I can't say whether Bairstow can or can't, but I can say that their proposal didn't hit the mark.
So is any of this, can we get a grant for any of it, or?
For this particular part of this expense, I would probably say no. But once you've got that and you've got something that you're ready to tender, that's what positions you to possibly leverage that when a grant's available, because they're always looking for shelf-ready projects, right? So if we get it to that stage, then I think we've got a far better chance.
So if the requirement from the consultant is a 12-meter stream channel, how else would you handle that?
So it could
if
be,
it's not a bridge?
Could be something like a box culvert or an open bottom box culvert. There's a couple of different options. If we knew explicitly what we wanted, and I explained this to Blair, is we could then go through a tendering process and say, design us this. This is exactly what we're looking for, and give us a price to design it. Then we'd be dealing with a tender, and the lowest price would be where you would go. But in this case, we were looking for options.
It's an expensive list of options.
And the reduced scope of cost was because of the project management component that they built into, I'm assuming all of them built into the request for a proposal?
Correct. So we initially put this proposal call out earlier in the year when we were pretty certain the direction from council was that we were moving forward, we were going to design and likely look to construct into the near future. But when we brought this forward, we thought it would be prudent to provide options, is that full scope cost is to do that, to provide design services and then contract administration, assuming we're constructing. The reduced scope would be simply get it to tender ready type of drawings and not the construction component.
Thanks, Kevin. Go ahead.
So then if we award it to Morrison, they will be actually doing the administration and supervising the construction and giving us the final report.
Correct. If we go with the full scope.
So I'm assuming that the 75,000 then from Bairstow would be simply designing a bridge.
Designing a crossing, yes, of some sort. Yeah.
And they are capable of doing that.
I can't say with certainty. All I can tell you is that they didn't score well in the proposal call, and they were missing some items in their submission.
On the scope, if and it gets a little bit to Paul's question about grants. So if we get to the engineering and the design of which these guys would do the first phase of that, and then we said, okay, we're going to move it out, and the province comes forward with an infrastructure grant. Is that normally that project management of all of following the project included sometimes in those? Like, I guess what I'm getting at is, would it be better for us today to do the engineering and design of the 250 and then get that piece done, and then once we know whether we're going to qualify for grants, perhaps that other 100 in the overall project management might be included in the grant money, maybe?
Yeah, so through your worship, one challenge would be is if council doesn't feel like they're going to construct in, say, 2021, I think that would be prudent, because it may be unfair for us to say to this individual, thanks for your price, and now we're gonna hang on to that for a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4, because their prices are gonna change for the construction administration side. So I think if council feels they're gonna construct next year, then I think you go with it. If you're not, then I believe, yeah, you probably back that out, and once you're ready to construct, then we would look for that consulting piece for that second phase.
Good. Councillor Dweck.
Is there any, in the request for proposals, is there any requirement to provide references? Like for you to follow up and check references?
Yeah.
And were they all checked, or for those, well, would you check all of the references for all of the proposals?
So I'll ask Chelsea, because I know that she was involved with it.
Yes, so as part of the matrix, they have to provide references, but also provide examples of past projects they've done. So we've reviewed all the past projects and their project teams, and then for references, we only checked the top individual for this, just based on the score.
Councillor Parslow.
Well, as a result of some of your questions, I'm a little confused, because we have a decisional point that has been alluded to by these discussions that we've had about, are we going to do this in 2021? And we haven't made that decision yet. So how can we advise you at this juncture to go full scope or reduced scope?
So I think, through your worship, is at this point is we if council knows they want to go through at least to getting the design and a tender, if council awards it to Morrison Hirschfield, and then at a later time they decide they don't want to proceed with construction in 2021, I think that's fine. We just obviously don't follow through with those last phases of the contract. I think the point I was trying to make is that we can't expect Morrison Hirschfield to sit around for a couple of years and maintain their price if there's no decision on that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Kevin. Motion. Thank you, Councillor Parth.
Don't get too agitated. Thought you were going to take off.
No, we've had lots of discussions.
Well, yes, I nearly skipped by the recommendation. It was so short. That report number 20-138 from the Watershed Coordinator, a request for proposals 2020-33 102 Avenue Crossing. Design service be received. Further, the City of Dawson Creek awards the proposal to Morrison Hirschfield for $348,673 plus GST.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Wilbur? Councillor Dweck? You had a question?
No, I was going to
sorry.
second.
And funding comes, we have 1.4, 1.5 in our flood mitigation reserve, so we could draw the funds for this through that funding?
That is our intent, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you.
I think it also highlights, the issue in preparing a project to become a shovel-ready project. There are significant costs. We've discussed this, whether it be this issue, paving projects in the future. So it just highlights the cost associated with getting a project to that point.
Sure. Any idea when they'll have it completed, Kevin? When's the completion timeline for the first phase?
So we were hoping, you probably know the timelines better than I do.
So for the reduced scope, I think it was December, like before Christmas,
Okay.
because then we were going to move into environmental permitting for January and March.
Okay. Because we still are going to push that grant aspect, right, of infrastructure and try to always make sure we get that ready and done as soon as possible.
There is the existing grant that's available, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kevin or Chelsea, this wouldn't qualify for it, as I understand. It needs to be the 1 in 200 year event where the span this wouldn't meet it, nor if you did put a 1 in 200 year bridge in there, for example, the bridge would go along 102nd, go up like this, down like this back here. The remainder of the land could be underwater, but your bridge would be dry, so.
Yeah, hopefully the feds, the province continue to push the message about building economy and building infrastructure, and we may see other stuff open up, and we have an engineered project shovel ready. Councillor Earl?
That's interesting to find out that those, I guess, limitations persist, despite the fact that, you know, from all we hear, these 1 in 200 year events are no longer 1 in 200.
No,
they're, you know, 1 in 50 year events, and what was once in 50 year events, 1 in 10 year, and now, you know, 10 years seems almost biannual. So, hope that something shakes loose from that. Anyway, thank you for that.
Councillor Parslow?
Just a question to staff. Is this matter going to be, I'm talking now not about the awarding of this contract, but the aspiration of building the structure, whatever it is, in 2021, going to be on a meeting agenda on for strategic planning next Monday?
We can speak to it there as we also move forward each year. We talk about our capital, but it will definitely be built into our discussions moving forward on budget.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 7.7, we have report 2140 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding our property tax collection.
I'd like to move the recommendation that report number 20-140 from the CFO, the 2020 property tax collection be received for information.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you.
Your
Seven,
Worship,
Blair?
maybe for those watching, I mean, it is interesting to note the amount of taxes we did collect as a result of the challenges people face this year. I thought were relatively significant. As of July 3rd, 2020, we collected $16.8 million in cash and $2.3 million in claimed homeowners grants, representing 77% of the total property tax balance, which is, I think, in the times we're in, I think was somewhat of a positive for us to see. We weren't sure what to expect going into that date. The penalties have not yet kicked in either for both residential or commercial, so I do expect additional payments to be forthcoming. And it just, I think it speaks to what the city was able to do and what the residents and businesses are able to accomplish. So.
Very, very positive. Considering what you delay that penalty and what commercial to October it could have been. Who knows? Right?
Significantly different. And the majority of taxes out of that group were residential, of course, but a significant amount of
commercial as well. Yeah, good. 7.8, we have report number 2141 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding a COVID-19 relief plan for the deferral of our 2020 tax sale and extension of redemption period. So, Blair?
Your Worship, as in previous, prior to me taking this position on, I was engaged in the tax sale at the city through my business and received a property. So I am going to excuse myself from these discussions just to avoid any perceived conflict based on behalf of your CAO with the city of Dawson Creek. I know that both Flavia and Brenda can handle this, so I will just step back from this discussion.
Thank you. So the, perhaps maybe if we could have a motion to receive for discussion at this point, just so Councillor Kemp, Councillor Wilbur, all in favor? Opposed, carried. Flavia, maybe could you walk us through the tax sale in terms of the options of 2020 and what we do, as well as then what are in the lineup now that we have to deal with or could be dealing with?
Yes. So through your worship, the province, as part of the COVID-19 relief plan, They gave the opportunity for council to decide to extend for 1 year what would be the tax sales for this year. So they are giving the option. Council would have decided if extended, the delinquent amount would be moved to the next year. Areas would then become delinquent for the next year, and that what would be the basis for tax sales. There are some requirements about communication, how would be dealing with that, but they are granted this option because they believe some people, some residents would not be able to fulfill the minimal payment of delinquent for this year. At the same time, they also extended the option for redemption period, which would be for those that had the tax sales last year, 2019 tax sales. They are required to pay the full amount for redemption of their property by September 29, if I'm not wrong, or 30. So if they are not able to pay, then they would be losing their property. So in this case, the province is also granting the option for another year of extension. So those that participate on the auction for the 2019 tax sales, they would have an addition of the interest over the payment. And those that needs to redeem, they would have another year to pay. So that's mainly what they're reporting saying. I would like to inform that I've been contacting other CFOs. We have been trying to understand what other municipalities are doing, and they are mainly in the same boat. They don't know what to do. In a way that some are kind of say, okay, some residents, they put themselves in that situation, so why would we change that? Others say, yeah, because of the current economic conditions that some of them face, they may not be able to bring right now the minimal payment, what they would be able to. So that's the balance. So we have, from the locations we discussed, there are some still pending decision, what council is going to be doing, just to let you know.
So if I can pose to you my thought and maybe help, because it's complex a little bit in terms of this. So to me, COVID-19 coming in February, March, impacted people's abilities this year to meet some of their financial obligations. And so I think we need to appreciate that for those residents and businesses that might be placed in that position because of COVID. And so by doing something along the bylaw to say anybody who is going to be now impacted by COVID-19 for their ability to service that tax debt and keep that property from moving into the tax sale is one thing. But anybody who was in it previous to 2019 or 2018 or 2017 who's had a property impacted by that, then they're not, to me, they're not, that position, that circumstance, that predicament was not caused by COVID-19. That was caused previous. And so we should move forward, to me, with the tax sale and move forward with those properties. But to anything that's going to be impacted in 2020 by a resident impacted or a business person impacted by COVID for their ability to do property tax, can we separate them? Can we still move forward with the tax sales on those properties that are now in the property tax sale sequence of events of the lineup? But can we and still move forward them as business as usual, but can we provide some relief to the residents who now are impacted in 2020? It's all or nothing?
All or nothing.
Okay.
That's exactly, and they emphasized that on the granting of opportunity.
Okay. Thank you, Flavie. Councillor Javetkov?
So if we defer, say the tax sale that's coming up for this year, there's 3 years of taxes that haven't been paid. We defer that to 2021. Does that mean there's 4 years now of taxes?
Exactly, 4 years. Then
Which is,
exactly.
It's another,
It's an extra cost.
I believe that exacerbates the problem. I mean, buying them out now, you've got 3 years. Well, actually, you're not buying them out. The tax sale will go on. They have a year to buy it out at today's price. So it seems to me that we should be going ahead with the tax sale.
Through your worship, I just would like to add something else. So I did include here the numbers of potential tax sales as of the time of the report. And my only concern is that at the moment when I was writing the report, we are over 40% of the average number we would have at that time. So just to give an example, last year, around beginning of July, we had 70 properties with potential risk of going to tax sales. When it was the time of the tax sales, only 4 went through tax sales, because there are the efforts of trying to pay at least the delinquent amount at the end. But at this time, we are talking about almost 100 property is already on the condition of going to a tax sale. So there is a condition behind which I can't confirm it's because of COVID, but some of those people that would have the delinquent amount at least paid, they are not able to pay at that moment. So that's just what I would like to take in consideration.
Go ahead, Councillor Kpac.
So again, if we defer them to next year, then we have all of this year's tax sales. They've got 4 years, but then there's also, do we revert back to the 3-year period? So next year we would have some 4 years and some 3 years?
Yes, you're gonna have the 4 years for those that missed it this year, and then 3 years regularly like we do for 2020.
So that basically doubles the...
Yes, for those that are carrying now, if that would be approved, they would have another year, but also you top up what's area would become delinquents, would have interest, so.
Flavia, can you, sorry, go ahead.
It seems to me that we should just maintain the status quo and continue on. Like the COVID, I mean, yeah, it's affected here a few months, and it might have some impact on some, but if you defer, you're just making it worse.
Can you tell me the number of redemptions from people, so that when they lose them and we sell them and we get our recovery of our overdue taxes? Have we ever had circumstances in the last 5 years where we have not recovered, where the property owner hasn't got revenue from the sale of the property? In other words, the sale of the property always covers the entire delinquent tax account.
Yes, that's at least is the bare minimum amount that can go for a tax sales, is to pay off what is outstanding.
And it always has covered our tax, overdue tax.
Because it's part of the requirement.
Yeah.
But we would lose it when in the auction, during the tax sales, no one bid. Then the property becomes ours,
yeah,
right? And then 1 year for redemption, and then it becomes our cost.
Yeah. But I guess my point is, normally the property is redeemed or sold for more than the delinquent tax. So it's not like our residents that are eating that lost tax revenue. We do recover it through the redemption sale of the property at some point.
At some point.
We're in.
Unless I missed something, I can't see the point of doing this. People, we do know that people have residential have until the end of August. So some of that 100 might be those people who plan on paying their taxes before the penalty date. The businesses have until October, isn't it?
They have until October 1st.
Until October, so the number may be reduced. But for them to be, they're not avoiding their tax, they're just basically not paying it for this year, and they'll have to pay it next year, or the year after that, or the year after that, and then they still have a redemption period after the tax sale. So if COVID still has impacted them this year, it's likely to impact them next year. But we've got 2 more years, hopefully, into COVID recovery in 2022, 23, or maybe some improvement. But I don't see the need myself to change it.
So Council's only requirement now is to provide you with a recommendation and a motion if we're prepared to change the current existing bylaw. Okay. Councillor Javetkov?
So we don't need a motion then, we just receive for information?
Only if we were going to defer the redemption period and extend it for a year. Flavia?
Yeah, but in the report, I do put the options.
It's option B.
Sorry, I lost my report. Come back.
Right, number 2 option B.
So I included 3 So recommendation number 2 would be council would authorize to extend or continue as it is for tax sales. And then recommendation 3 would be about the redemption. Council would take the decision of continue as it is or extend another year. That's just.
And I guess my point is, Flavia, if we're not changing anything from the current bylaw or the direction, do we need to provide any further direction if we're not changing anything?
No, I think Brenda would be the best one to help me on that if you would just leave it.
Yep, through your worship, I believe a motion should be considered just to clarify the direction of council.
So that the City of Dawson Creek 2020 tax sale continue as scheduled, and that the City of Dawson Creek tax sale redemption period continue as scheduled.
Exactly.
Okay?
So moved.
Well, it just seems to me we're not providing anything further or a change to our tax sale bylaw or period.
We put this on the agenda now, so
True.
I'm prepared to make both
Okay.
of them.
So Councillor Javetkov?
The motion is,
These guys want to make a motion.
it's fairly easy. So I'll make a motion, recommendation 2B, that the City of Dawson Creek 2020 tax sales continue as scheduled on September 28, 2020. And recommendation 3B, that the City of Dawson Creek 2019 tax sales redemption period continue as scheduled on September 30th, 2020.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Wilbur. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. And I think we're going to now take a recess for lunch, and we'll be back. Josh, 12:45. Brenda, sorry.
Through your worship, we did have an in-camera delegation scheduled for 12:30.
Okay.
So that might just delay our
Okay.
return to the open meeting.
All right. So we'll recess, grab a quick bite to eat, go back into our in-camera at 12:30 and deal with that. And then we'll be back into open, Josh, so probably 1 o'clock, I would say you're safe.
Okay. Your worship, we're good to go.
Okay, thank you. So we'll call ourselves back to order in our regular meeting and pick up our agenda on reports, and we're on item 7.9, report number 2142 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding the establishment of a 2020 operating reserve fund. Councillor
I'd
Parsons.
like to move that we receive this for discussion.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Reason I put that forward is I got I am quite concerned about the recommendation. I accept the fact that we will likely need to borrow some money. Don't dispute that. But I don't like to see our capital reserves, as little as they are, be used as the source. I'd rather borrow externally. I'd expect to pay a good, proper interest rate. If we were to borrow internally, I'd expect that we would charge ourselves interest. So, because I don't believe in depleting, I'm sure that money must be in interest-bearing accounts somewhere. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what's the what's the disadvantage of borrowing externally?
I think one is, of course, pay interest externally. So if this is an option that the province is giving to municipalities to exactly reduce the impact of the shortage in cash. I just want to go back to April 14 when we had the meeting discussing about cash flow. If we would collect less, if we could go back to the capital reserve and borrow internally just to flow with the cash to avoid paying interest outside. So here, actually, province came to this option, say, yes, you can do this actually, just build up a reserve, go internally in your own capital reserves or any other reserves that you have, and borrow internally without interest. This is just to minimize the impact of cash. So in this case, why I'm asking 1.75 here is because at the same time, province, in a way, is, demanding that we must pay the whole collection regarding to the province, either if we have not collected. So because we are required to do so, we are reducing our cash flow in 1.75. So what I'm asking is like temporarily, until we are collecting those, we would be using our own reserve instead of going outside to MFA or either to our third-party bank and paying for interest for a decision that was actually taken by the province towards us. So this is more a strategic way of moving cash internally. And I do believe by the portion that we are removing from the reserve temporarily, this is not affecting us council decision and proceed with any capital project for the next year or so, either with the volume of reserves that we have there.
Well, that was another point. You're going to borrow from the sewer capital.
Yes.
And my impression is that we're going to be proceeding with correcting whatever the correction is, the sewage issue at full steam ahead. You know what I mean? Whatever it's going to take. So we have 4.7 million in the 2020 year-end capital reserve. And whilst you're only removing 624,000, I have no idea what the cost of the solution to the sewage issue is going to be. I do know that we spent over $8 million on the, some years ago, to the trunk bypass. So that was another point of concern, 13.25% is maybe a small amount, but I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I was wondering about the wisdom of even tapping into the sewer capital. So am I correct, Flavia, in saying that the borrowing, internal borrowing, we would be paying no interest?
Yes, that's what province is granting for us. Because
and how would we replenish that money? What would be the mechanism?
Yes, so my idea is based
taxes?
on collection. Yes,
Right.
so as we collected the portion of the that we are collecting on behalf of the province, we would put it back to the reserve.
So in October, when the business or commercial accounts have to meet their, have to pay their taxes without penalty, and so at October 1st, they get a 6% penalty. So we expect we've recovered so far 57 or 58% of commercial payments.
60.
60?
It was about 60%.
So in October, if we collect another 20 or 25%, then we recover that money back that we now have had to give to the regional district and or to the other sources. So we may not have to utilize that borrowing,
exactly,
depending on how much we recover in that payment of taxes through the year. This is a buffer for us in the event that we don't get the full payment of all of our taxes that we've had to give to the RD, that we've had to give to the regional hospital district, to MFA and BCAA. In order to cover that payment off, if we don't recover that money in property payments, tax payments from our commercial and residential, then we may have to borrow in order to meet that obligation.
Yeah, I understand that and I appreciate that. So just, again, work me through some of the mechanics. So, supposing we did borrow 331,000 from the water capital, and we didn't get our full tax payments by the end of October. How do you replace that? Can you put money into the water capital from a general tax, or would you have to increase the water utility to replace?
No, you can use it. So again, because it's internally borrowing, whatever you collect as infrastructure, you'll be starting to replenish again. You can definitely take from the general operation to put back to the reserve. Here, the question is a timing of the flow of the money. Because for me, it's very important. Beginning of the year, every time we start beginning of the year, there is a struggle because we have much less cash coming, right? But your operation expenditures is still running until March or April when we start to get PRA, and then you start to move the money. So the question here is really about at the end of the year, I'm pretty sure we're going to be still collect some money, but I have a buffering to my first 3 months, use our own cash that's sitting on reserve, and provinces grant us this opportunity without interest to start to move money operational. And as the money start to flow March, April, May again, then we can replenish the reserves. I'm trying to avoid pay. For me, it's unnecessary interest if we can use our own money that's sitting there. And yes, do we have interest receiving on that? Yes, it's still less than what we would be paying.
So we are earning interest on this money?
Yes.
By how it's been invested?
It depends. It depends on I have some investments that are in 3 years long-term investment. Majority of GIC, and the majority now, because of strategy, again, I'm having saving account with a high interest.
And the other piece to this as well, Flavia, is we get to keep that school district tax money that we normally would flow to the province as we've collected it, and that's a buffer in there for us as well to offset.
At the end of the year.
At the end of the year, right?
But the question is the end of the year, because in January, I have done specific projections month by month from cash flow and how we would be entering 2021. And I am trying to protect our the cash flow by the beginning of the year, because this is an opportunity provinces grant only in 2020. So that's an opportunity to use borrow for our reserve, because we have in the community charter, the council can go through by law and borrow internally from any reserve, but you need to pay interest. It's very specific. So here they are granting this opportunity, and they are saying, just to deal with your shortfall on the cash flow.
Thank you, Flavia. Further discussion? Motion. Councillor Earl.
I move the recommendation that report number 20-142 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding establishment of the 2020 Operating Reserve Fund, interfund borrowing be received. Further, that Council approve the establishment of the 2020 Operating Reserve Fund and direct staff to prepare a bylaw for consultation at the next Council meeting.
Consideration.
Oh, consideration, pardon me.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp, discussion? Councillor Earl?
I just want to say thank you for the report. I understand. I hope, obviously, that we don't need it, and that by the end of the year we're all back to par with taxes paid. But I also understand that even though the opportunity cost of pulling money out of savings to lend it to ourselves, you know, if you made more in interest than you paid in interest, banks wouldn't make money. So it makes sense to, if we do have to borrow over the short term to alleviate cash flow issues, to do it from ourselves.
Thank you. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. 710, we have a report number 2143 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding the waiving of policy for new permissive tax exemption applications.
I'll move.
Councillor Wilbur, sorry, I'm having trouble here.
No problem. I'll move that report number 20-143 from the Chief Financial Officer regarding waiving permissive tax exemption policy on the 2021 new applications be received. Further, that the permissive tax exemption policy be waived for 2020 and that no new applications be permitted for consideration within the 2021 permissive tax exemption bylaw.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Javetkov, discussion? Councillor Parslow?
Yeah, I am obviously in favour of this. I just have I'm wondering about the wording of this. I talked to Blair just briefly before a council meeting about this. And I just wondered if, are we saying here in the last part there, the part there that bothers me is that the permissive tax exemption policy be waived. Now that means we're waiving the entire policy, where in reality we're only waiving a portion of it. So to me, it's just the way it's phrased.
Well, we have a policy that says you have to apply for a tax exemption by October of this year for 2021. And because we're reviewing it, we want to waive that policy because we don't want. Well, it is the policy that says
For new applications.
for new applications.
Is that is that a standalone policy? A new application, or is it part? I thought it's part of the general policy on permissive taxes.
It's on the policy of the permissive tax, where there is a section saying about how you apply for new applications, and then council is going to review by that. That was what.
Yes, so that's what I'm trying to say, is that we've got a permissive tax policy, and part of that policy relates to the renew. That surely all we're waiving is that part.
Yeah, the renew, the 2021 new application.
Yeah,
yes.
So I agree with the intent. I'm just raising a flag that the way I read it, if I read it, I'm not reading the way it's intended to read.
That the permissive tax exemption policy be waived for 2020 and that no new applications be permitted for consideration in the 2021 permissive tax exemption bylaw. So you're saying you think we should just be waiving that part of the permissive tax exemption policy that allows applications by October?
That's right.
Okay. So the mover and the seconder are okay if we amend that change? Does that work for administration?
I'm fine with that.
Yeah? Yeah, okay. So it's...
I'm not trying to be difficult.
Yeah, no, it's...
The way I read it, and who knows, sometimes you can, people will read it one way, it's meant another way. So.
Okay, good. Any further comments, questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 711, we have report number 2129 from the corporate officer regarding Chamberlain Park offers to purchase. Councillor Javetkov.
I'll move that report number 20-129 from the corporate officer read Chamberlain Park offers to purchase be received. Further, that the offers to purchase as identified within the notice of intent to dispose of property attached to this report be approved.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Parslow, discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 712, report number 2134 from the corporate officer regarding flying the provincial flag at City Hall. Councillor Parslow.
Report number 2134 from the corporate officer reflying the provincial flag at City Hall be received. Further, that an additional flagpole be installed at City Hall and designated as the community flagpole to fly the Treaty 8 flag permanently along with local organizations' flags in recognition of their special events, causes or efforts. Further, that the provincial flag be flown on the flagpole next to the Canadian flag outside City Hall as per the flag etiquette of Canada.
Thank you. Second, Councillor Kemp, discussion? Councillor Earl?
And just for my own curiosity, if I recall correctly, when last time we had a flagpole installed, cost was about $30,000?
I would
The
have
flagpole?
to check.
not
No, I
that,
think it was like
35.
4,000.
Okay, yeah. Sorry, I was
and we
putting an
paid it out
extra
of-
zero on there, my bad.
Yeah. I think we paid it, and it was paid out of economic development.
Yeah,
Brenda?
yeah.
Yeah, the estimated cost here is 3,000.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, I threw it, sorry, threw an extra zero on that.
I was like,
I don't have a union staff.
Councillor Javetkov?
So what we'll have is 3 flags for Canada, Dawson Creek, and BC. Then we'll have 1 pole that we cycle all these other ones through.
Mhm.
And when there isn't an event, it's the Métis flag that's on there.
Treaty
Treaty
8.
Or Treaty 8.
Yes.
Okay.
Blair?
Your worship, also, we have been dealing with, there was an individual that met with yourself and myself some time ago as a result of the Pride crosswalk and the damage that it has seen over the last number of months. The individual was willing to erect a flagpole to fly the Pride flag permanently. We spoke with the school district. His preference was at the high school. They felt that unless they were to put a flag at each of their, whether it be in Chetwynd at the high school, Tumbler Ridge, or here, it wouldn't be appropriate to do it at just one location. They were supportive of the concept, but felt somewhat constrained with that. The individual is still, I think, looking for a response from the city. His preference was the high school, but I'm just wondering, I know the individual, I've been in contact with them a couple of times since our meeting. I think we will have to address that, and I'm not sure, if I understand this motion, it is that the Pride flag would fly during the Pride month then in Dawson Creek. But the individual, I'm just curious how we would respond to this person or put him in touch with the Pride Society to try and work together that way. But I thought it was a very nice offer of the gentleman and one that he took very seriously.
Yeah, the other option to me is the Peace Park, and if the school and the Peace River Schools 59 aren't willing and interested or able to, then maybe we explore that with them and bring that back and say, if you're interested in it, here's another option. Would you consider the Peace Park as another option, and council could consider that?
Okay, I'm certainly willing to do that. I think at some point, and I don't think it'll be dealt with under this, there may be numerous requests coming forward for different, Pride is one. I can think of others that are in the forefront right now in the media wanting to fly a flag. So there would need to be consideration there at some point, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the annual flag raising, and the policy now addresses which ones we're flying on a regular basis on that other pole, and we'll make sure that those who apply get the opportunity to fly their flag at that pole here at City Hall, I would think. Okay. Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 713, we have report number 2144 from the corporate officer regarding the rescheduling of our 2020 by-election. Councillor Javetkov?
Move that report number 20-144 from the corporate officer rescheduling the 2020 by-election be received, further that Brenda Ginter be appointed as the chief election officer, and that Cindy Fisher and Sabrina Walter be appointed as deputy chief election officers. Further, that Saturday, October 17th be designated as general voting day for the by-election.
Thank you. Second? Councillor Kemp, discussion? Councillor Wilbur?
Just for you to staff, I'm just curious, like, is this the set date now and we'll have provisions in place regardless of COVID or whatever is going on to carry this one through?
This is the date. The information that was shared with Brenda is that they will have guidelines within probably the next week now. I think it was 2 weeks when we talked a week or so ago. So we anticipate, but having said that, I think everybody knows the world can change pretty quick, but this is the intent right now.
Date, perfect, thank you.
Councillor Javetkov?
Do you have dates for the nomination and campaign?
Just gonna count back, September 1st, yep.
Something 11th, isn't it?
The 11th, September 1st through to September 11th.
Yeah, the notice will be posted within 14 days. We'll post the notice, and then you're correct. The nomination period is September 1st to 11th.
Good. Well, it'll be good to have the by-election held and get the 6th seat filled. Thank you. Any further comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. 8, bylaws 8.1, council procedure amendment bylaw number 4451 for consideration of adoption.
So moved.
Councillor Wilbur, second. Councillor Parslow, discussion. Amends the bylaw to allow CAO to into our agenda as formally. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you.
More to those written reports.
Report number 2133 from the city planner regarding zoning bylaw number 4450. Move, Councillor Parslow. Second.
Sure.
Councillor Wilbur. Discussion. And this is the work that we've been undergoing for some time now in regards to zoning, residential, etc., and through our official community plan, and so it's a ton of work and puts some structure in regards to some of that work. So I appreciate the work done by Nick and Kevin and staff in terms of getting us to this point, and obviously it's a lot of work. Councillor Earl?
Yeah, just to echo your sentiments, thank you to staff and the consultants who... It's kind of anticlimactic for me. Obviously a lot of work went into this, and I think we landed on something that was very good. My one regret is that we didn't have more buy-in from the public, and it's not due to lack of trying on our end. We did a number of communities. So while I'm fairly confident this is an improvement on what we had, I would have liked to have that confidence reaffirmed by the public a little more, and we didn't have that. So anybody watching, I hope this is you support this, because based on public feedback, it's hard for us to tell where we landed on something, but I do think it's a good improvement. I thank everyone for their work. I wish we'd had a bit more public engagement to direct us.
Thank you. Further comments, questions? Given third reading as amended, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Item 9, Mayor's Business. So I'll give a quick update on a number of initiatives. Coastal GasLink. I met with the folks from Coastal GasLink on 2 major projects that are ongoing for Coastal right now as the project kicks off in Groundbirch. And Swearis Murphy are the contractor for this end, and we've been engaged with them as well as with TC Energy as that project gets underway in a big way, and across northern British Columbia is an important project, and so they will see activity in Groundbirch that's going to impact our community. There will be TC Energy folks living in situated in Dawson Creek and hotels and our rental accommodation, as well as the workers on this end. We will see them in the community, both in the RV parks and rental accommodation and etc. So that's going to be very positive to see that economic activity for the community. They're also building a major compressor station at the start of the project called Wild Lake, and it's just past the Groundbirch store, and that's the kickoff to it. And this compressor station is what compresses exactly that. It compresses the gas and pushes it to Kitimat. And so this is going to be about an 18-month project. It'll be about 250 or 300 people employed on it through its peak and construction. So more of that direct economic benefit to the community when you see the workers and purchasing equipment and supplies and stuff. And in fact, I talked to George from Tiger Stationers, and he said they already ordered 18 sets of furniture from his store for their offices and things. And as I was talking to them, they said, and when we're done, we'll donate them back into the community as a commitment to supporting Dawson Creek through this. So anyway, Coastal is an important project, and it's really important to see that economic benefit to hotels and rental accommodation and the RV parks, etc. I've been attending the Community Opioid Action Team meetings over the last probably 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 months. I'm not sure for how long. It's been very interesting to kind of see the work that the harm reduction group do, and all of the different peer work that goes on in terms of programs to help those recovering or dealing with addiction and or recovering. And one of the aspects that they've talked to us about, and Blair and I met with them, is the sharps, dealing with the sharps and the needles. And we hear about that in our community, where you see residents or different folks talking about how they're finding discarded needles. And so in high incident now, what they're looking at, and they're going to have the peers. The peers are the people recovering, either addicts or people who are in recovery. And so they're going to do a program over the summer where they're going to start to collect these needles and identify where the high use locations of the drug use is, and with the desire to be able to install sharp containers so that they can safely dispose of the needles in an appropriate manner. And they're looking to us to be able to help support that initiative in some way once they identify where the use is. So anyway, I'm interested in it. I think anything we can do to keep the community safer by dealing with these sharp devices, the needles, etc., then I want to understand that, and we'll bring that back to council as it develops over the next couple of months. I had a reach out by Access Employment. It's a national organization. I think it's funded through the provincial government, and what they are is they're looking to connect internationally trained professionals into Canada and into communities. And so what they do is they get a community to partner with them and host an event where, and this will be done electronically online, where we will connect some employers in the community with international prospective employees, professionals who are looking to come to Canada. And so it's going to be a little bit of time for me and through economic development, but I like the idea of anytime we can try to find a way to attract professionals into our community or our region or our province, then that's a good thing. And it'll take very little for us to do something in regards to supporting it. And I'm going to do some work through economic development to do that. So, obviously, Ovintiv, we had a major announcement by Encana Ovintiv a couple months ago where they've reduced workforce substantially, 25% across North America, and certainly that was evident in our community and the folks that we've been able to make contact with and work and make relationships with over the last number of years. For some of those folks who are no longer with Ovintiv, and so it's sad to see that transpire, but that's part of business, I guess, in the world where the market and the business is driven by decisions that are made. One thing I do want to update, though, is that they have indicated that they will begin ramping up their drilling program in August, September, and they'll be having 2 or 3 rigs come back into the region, and we'll start to see that activity come back into development. And so we'll see some stuff with them in terms of economic benefits as well. I had a conference call with the Chief Operating Officer and a VP from North River Midstream. And so North River are a company that bought Spectra assets and bought midstream processing plants and pipeline plants, facilities. And so anyway, they just gave me an update about a week and a half ago on some of their plans for building infrastructure in the region in 2021. And we'll start to see that evolve, and more construction of projects that are intended to deal with both natural gas and the natural gas liquids in the region. And they got some pretty major plans for 2021 that will impact all of Northeast BC. And It was good to get an update on them. They're doing a plant expansion at the old West Tupper plant. There was a Murphy plant towards Tumbler Ridge, and they're connecting that to the grid, so they're building a new power line. And so they're under some fairly extensive construction and work and developing their assets, and so it was good to hear that from them. I went out to Chetwynd a week and a half ago, and I met the new chief of the Soto First Nations, newly elected. Justin Napoleon is the new chief, taking over for Ken Cameron, and young new chief in Soto, and so it was good to meet him, and I'm excited to be able to continue to build that relationship with the Soto First Nation and the City of Dawson Creek and Mayor and Council. Last week I had a lady come in to see me, Kimberly McDonald, and it's just a little more of this mental health and substance use. She's a resource nurse working specifically in Dawson Creek, Fort St. John, in regards to providing support services to those folks dealing with mental health and substance use. And so I'm going to connect Kimberly in to some of those interagency groups and things that we deal with to ensure that we make sure we make those connections with the various organizations in the community for her to help build the services that we need for our community and region. I got asked by Northern Health to sit on a provincial committee hosted by the Provincial Health Services Authority, and Provincial Health Services look after those services that are specific or to a provincial or to a regional health authority. So the Vancouver Children's Hospital as an example, or and they also look after patient transport for emergency services for ambulance. And so they facilitated a one-day session on sustainable rural patient transportation and First Nations. So I sat in, and it was really, really good to be in that kind of a level of giving some input into what we need to do to build and enhance patient transportation in rural and remote and First Nations communities in British Columbia. And that's an ongoing bit of work that's going to carry some recommendations back in September, October as a time frame. So I was really pleased to be a part of that. Any questions from anybody on any of that? So we had, as a delegation, the community care crew looking for, I think, basically a letter of support for us to give us support to work with administration on initiatives they may have to deal with, and so bring that back for council. Blair, do you have any input,
Your Worship, no. I think it's going to be an exciting group to work with. Councillor Kemp has indicated that she would like to be the lead liaison with council with that group, and I think as we can work together, I think it will be coming up with ideas and what can be done. There'll be both probably public and private work, whether it be a public building that may have been received some unnecessary painting, and they want to fix that or do some murals, up to and including private property as well. So.
This is very cool to see a group of concerned residents, citizens coming forward to say we want to try and help, so good for them. So a motion that we provide a letter of support for the work and direct them to deal with our administration on initiatives.
Yes.
Move Councillor Parslow, second Councillor Kemp. Any discussion?
Your Worship, would in that motion appoint Councillor Kemp as the liaison to the city, or do you need to do that?
Well, I don't even know if we have a committee or a structure for that, and I think if Councillor Kemp is going to volunteer her time to be a part of it, then she can update council as councillor business on it. And
terrific.
Yeah, when they become a society, maybe revisit.
Well, council would have to direct it as a committee that we appoint to a council to, and so anyway, we'll see how it unfolds.
Sounds like a committee we might want to liaison with.
Perhaps, yeah. We'll see how it unfolds and how they build their structure.
The bylaws.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for that, Amy. And Kpac, Joanna, and we're here. And so 2 requests to do the stuff on the pillars. Did we have anything in our lease with respect to what they can and cannot do?
Your worship, that I will have to check. I am not sure. Brenda, are you aware of any clause in there? I think if there was a clause, it would require, what it would require is consent of council for that, but we can check.
Yeah, the only thing I'm thinking about is that historic building designation, is that's how we got some of the funding, I remember, and I don't know if that might have some...
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that in the purchase agreement, for a 10-year period, it cannot be used for profit as an overall, but I don't recall
But as far as
anything about the
decor
look
or
of it,
decorating.
yeah.
No, as long as you preserve the brickwork and the windows, external stuff.
All right. So do you want to, and so there's two separate requests to do that artwork or stenciling on the pillars as was suggested by Councillor Earl and the parking lot. Do you want to do them separately? Yeah, okay. So the first request under use of the pillars, require a motion. Councillor Wilbur?
Yep.
Move. Second to Councillor Earl. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the use of the parking lot in terms of, and I'm assuming that, go ahead, Brenda.
Sorry, just requesting clarification on the artwork. It was staff to come back with
We'll go to,
options,
yeah,
or?
so you guys go to work with them and just bring back what they're planning to do and how they're gonna do it and.
Okay.
So
Just-
it is approved to go forward with
Yeah.
it.
Because I don't know that we just want to clarify that we can do that under the agreement and all that, right?
Okay. Does, your worship, does council want a say in what goes on those posts? I heard there was a question earlier. Is there any need for that? Do you want approval of that?
I think as long as you guys come up with a plan, it's legit, like it can be accommodated under the terms of their lease agreement, and council, I'm hearing, are happy to accommodate that. Well,
Okay.
I don't think we need to have any input into what the design is, or unless the picture of the mayor, and then I wouldn't mind having a photo of that. I'd pick that myself, but.
All right.
Or.
He's in there.
But no, I advise Joanne to watch out for cultural appropriation. It's a big issue. So I think she understood what I'm referring to. That, for instance, it would be totally inappropriate if I had the skill, me, to put up something depicting the Métis pillar of this community, or the Cree pillar, right? Because I'm not one of them, right? It's a very, on the West Coast, it's a very hot potato, but it's up here as well, to a degree. For instance, at one arts function, a person did some very fine work, but it was Northwest Coast First Nation. And he's not Northwest Coast First Nation. And that could be a big issue, is cultural appropriation. Where the dominant culture, right, takes something from a non-dominant culture and uses it, right, for their own work without express permission. So I just worry about those sort of things, because in the art world, that's a big issue.
Sounds like Vanilla Ice might be in some trouble.
So we'll
I hope she
we'll have
understands
administration follow that. Did we have any further comments, questions? Did we vote? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. And the parking lot and
Can I ask a question
ahead.
on that? Through you to staff, my understanding was that parking lot was privately owned, that we just owned the piece of lawn, green space between the playground and the parking lot.
no, we own it all now.
Wasn't that donated to the city?
Did this,
So we do. It was.
I
It
thought
was-
Mr. Lindbergh owned it, so
Yeah,
I'm
he-
asking.
Yes.
No.
Trent Lindbergh.
Councillor Javetkov?
Yeah, Trent Lindbergh
Okay.
donated it back to the city.
Okay, thank you.
That land, we've got it sort of designated as potential for social housing or social programs, and I think that we should be leaving that open. I mean, one of the things that we want to do is revitalize downtown, and, you know, it's nice to have those options, those opportunities to provide land as part of our partnership share. And, you know, I think that there's other options for the daycare. I mean, we've got the old swimming pool site that's grassed in, and there's actually a playground there, and so I would like to see us retain those lots for future opportunities for, you know, some kind of housing or something.
Okay. I think the issue for them is it's congruent with their facility, and to be able to grow their daycare, they need that outside play space in order to do that, was the way I understood it. And the opportunity of providing a service and a lease so that if we ever did need it, then you give the appropriate notice to be able to vacate it. But it's for them to be able to provide a service in the community like that daycare and early care. For me, I've heard that before, that it's a real issue, a real demand. So I haven't had anybody else step up that have seemed to expand it, but I don't know that either. Councillor Wilbur?
I know that the current playground they have is at max capacity with their current, the current clients that they have. It's full. So I do like the idea of allowing them to use it, and then if down the road we see that it needs to be something else, then we have that option. But it's sitting there now, no one's using it. And like the delegation did say, people are driving through there. They're ripping through there with their vehicles and leaving nice tire marks on the lawn. I'm fine with them using it, but I don't think it should be a permanent structure put in place, but I would be fine with them using the green space.
As a lease.
As a lease.
Councillor Parsons?
So we're talking about, one, there's that green space, right, and then there's the lot. So you're talking about the lot?
I'm talking about the green space, right?
Oh, the
so
green
because they've got, so in between the playground they currently have now fenced, and that parking lot is green space. I have no problem with them leasing that and using it. That little playground that's fenced in is at max capacity when the kids come out on a nice day.
Just sorry to belabor this point, is that green space part of the lots though?
I think they're two separate lots. That's what I was asking about the parking lot. I think they're two separate lots.
Two lots before you actually hit the paved lot.
Yeah.
Two lots of green space.
They have a playground existing now, and they want to expand it into the other area.
Into the grass.
In order to accommodate the additional daycare spaces.
Yeah, and I'm quite empathic to that. I just want to know, is that a separate? Yeah, but just tell me whether who's the ownership of that?
That's us.
Us.
We don't have that. That's what they're currently at. That's where they're looking to stand.
Just one lot.
For now.
So the question is, do we want to entertain it? And then we would direct administration to work with them to see what it is they need and what they're proposing. But if we're not interested in entertaining it at all, then Councillor Wilbur?
I would be happy to move that we ask staff to work with the executive director at Kpac to look at expanding the lease to use the green space, but not anything further than that, just the green space. I don't think we need to let them go all the way out to the parking lot, but they can expand their playground into that next lot of green space.
Sufficient space to expand their daycare capabilities.
Sure.
And that gets them into that vacant green space.
Yeah, but I would be clear that the parking lot's not included.
Okay. So you made that by way of a motion?
Yes.
Do you have a seconder? Councillor Earl, discussion? Councillor Earl?
I agree. It's, if we can lease it to them, no permanent structures, not tie the hands of future council in the event the land's needed for other purposes, great. In the meantime, the Calvin Crook Center has been open for what, 5, 6, 7 years? Quite some time. But anyway, and it's remained unused. So if we have a use for it that can provide more access to childcare, if somebody who requires childcare, I'm very sensitive to the needs of parents. It's not an easy thing to secure reliable childcare. So anything we can do to help that, and if we can make use of space that's otherwise unused, all the better for it.
Thank you. Further discussion? Ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Thank you. Opposed, Councillor Kpac. And that's it for me. Any further delegations, Brenda?
The airport.
Yes, the first delegation, Mr. McDonald.
Oh, right.
Just no formal direction yet
Okay.
provided.
So, from my perspective, he's got some issues that are completely within the infrastructure, engineering, design that we need administration to deal with. I don't know that there's any specific ask in terms of us politically that we need to intervene in. And then the second piece of it is that, dealing with the Ministry of Transportation and Highways on that groundwater flow that they have changed from Spittle's sole property with the bridge, Blair.
Your Worship, I will follow up. Mr. McDonald was going to get me the name and contact of the person that indicated it was the city's problem now, as Mr. McDonald put it. We will follow up on that discussion with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. There was an ask based on the ditch in his house, of which the concrete had been washed away, as I understood his ask, Your Worship. So is council prepared to reinvest in concrete the ditch, or would you like us to look at that? And
Yeah, to me, I think engineering and administration got to come back to council and say, is what he's doing in there and developing that ditch permitted? Is it allowed? Is it something that we would even agree to? And is it something that we're responsible for under the natural flow of the water? I think that's... I don't even know if it's permitted to do the improvements in the ditch that they're doing.
And I would have to check into that.
Yeah. So anyway, we would direct administration to deal with Mr. McDonald on the aspects of the erosion in the ditch that's impacting his property. Councillor Parslow?
Wasn't there some mention about this emergency funding, whether this project, concrete part, would be eligible?
Under the Dinas...
Public property, though.
Pardon?
I say it's public property.
I believe this is the ditch within the right-of-way of the road, but we will pursue that, and if there is funding available or so on, we'll let you know on that as well.
Yeah, if the disaster funding impacts him directly or his property or damages to his property or residence, then he can apply for that. I think he's talking about some erosion control of stuff that he's done within the ditch that I think is public property, I think.
Yes.
So.
It is, definitely.
Okay, so a motion to direct administration to deal with Mr. McDonald on the aspects of the erosion control and the mitigation control.
So moved.
Councillor Wilbur, second Councillor Earl. And you'll follow through the Ministry of Transportation on the
yes.
aspects of the creek. Further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Anything further, Brenda? Anything further you need me to do?
Blink, blink.
Thank you. Consent calendar, 3 items. Motion to accept the consent.
So moved.
Councillor Wilbur, second Councillor Kemp. Any items you want to lift? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Strategic priorities, anything new, Blair?
Nothing new at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. Media? Recess, motion to recess to Blair?
Your Worship, just a quick one. I know earlier we received a number of letters with people expressing their concern about the floods that occurred. There's a great deal, I just wanted to emphasize, there's a great deal of work ongoing in-house right now, looking at what options may be available to the city of Dawson Creek to try and correct that. I know that since our break, there was an email into myself asking if anything was going to be done. We received those for information from the writers, but to be rest assured, the city is looking, and council has made it very clear that we're looking at what options are available out there to ensure that we move our city's infrastructure forward. So I just wanted to make that comment in case people were still watching hours later. Hopefully they are, but that's what I wanted to add.
Sure. Thank you. Councillor Parslow?
So is that the full extent of the Chief Administrative Officer's verbal report for this week.
Well, that is, yes.
That's
It was
it.
a feature I was looking forward to, you know, a new feature, it was.
Anxious.
I have a
and-
great deal more to add in the next meeting.
Looking forward to it with anxious anticipation. So a motion to recess to close. Councillor Earl, Councillor Kemp, all those in favor, opposed, carried.